Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of BCS Community Connections. And today on the podcast, I am honored, above honored, to have my pastor from Brazos Fellowship, Senior Pastor Will Lewis, with me. Thanks for coming in, man. Hey. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Lowell. Excited to be here.
You know, we tried to make this happen here for a little while. Like you and I, we had a time frame scheduled, and then we were talking in prep before we got on here. We were talking about how everything tends to like fall at the same times for us. Like I shot him a quick email. This was about a month and a half ago. I said, "Hey man, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to postpone. I'm not feeling real good." And I came down with a case of COVID, and I go to church. Or I go online at church and it says, Pastor Will, yeah, he's come down with COVID too. I'm like, are you trying to show me up here? Man? Like he's like, we're doing one over each other here.
Yeah.
So it just kind of worked out. We both kind of got it out of the way.
Yeah.
And we're able to reschedule. So I'm just glad to have you here. So
absolutely. Me too.
This is my first podcast with a church, and I'm honored that it's my church that I get to do that, and honored that you've taken the time out of your busy week to be with us and to be able to discuss Brazos Fellowship and really kind of be able to share the information to people who are maybe listening for the first time, trying to figure out maybe where they want to land as a church, or maybe they're moving to town, whether they're a student or whether they're relocating maybe for a job, and they're trying to figure out where they can plant roots in their spiritual life and be able to figure out what works for them. It's always hard. It's always hard when you relocate to find that church, right? Or to find that one that's there. And so people kind of test the waters, and first thing they usually do is they're kind of reaching out to folks like, you know, hey, where do you go to church? And they get invites to go places and things like that. So today on the podcast, what we wanted to do is we really wanted to talk about Brazos Fellowship at the front side. Give everybody an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you, because I know we've also got folks from the church that are going to be watching and listening to this.
That's awesome.
And so my goal here is to be able to put the church at the front side for people who are interested in attending church and what it is that we do in the community and give back into the community and your role behind all of that. But also to, and again, this was in pre-prep, we were talking about, like, my goal here is today I'm going to take you off the stage where you're most comfortable and put you in front of folks so that they get to learn a little bit about Will Lewis, the man, the husband, you know, everything that sometimes people don't make the tie back to, other than just the pastor up on stage who prepares all week for the message and everything. So we've gotten an opportunity to kind of go through some stuff and talk about a few things in here. So first thing I want to start with is your background, where you grew up, where you went to school, how you married up. I mean, you and I both are very fortunate in marrying up.
Absolutely.
So
super blessed in that area. So I grew up in South Austin, Texas, and we probably, when I was about 12, 13 years old, my parents divorced, and my dad remarried, and shortly thereafter we moved out south of Austin, kind of out in the hill country, and anyway, wound up going to school in Buda, Texas, Jack C. Hayes High School, and graduated there, went to Southwest Texas State.
So just so we're clear, because people who hear Buda today are like, man, that's a pretty good sized town. Like, you know, that's growing. It's big. That is not what it was.
It was just cow pastures back then.
Exactly.
We were a tiny little school, and not much to do out there, but probably played to our benefit. So being a part of a church youth group was probably the most exciting thing going on at that time. And we went to a little Baptist church all through high school. And that's where I grew up, and out there in that hill country. And then went to college, San Marcos, and then wound up going to seminary in Fort Worth at Southwestern Seminary. It's a Baptist seminary up there. And but between there, after graduating from college and going to seminary, I went to work at a church in Corpus Christi, Yorktown Baptist Church down there. A good buddy of mine was a youth minister down there. And that's actually where I met Leslie, my wife. And that summer, she was a intern that was discipling junior high girls, and I was over the youth group. And anyway, we served together all summer. It was really a great way to get to know each other.
Yeah.
And I got to see her sort of in action with her relationship with the Lord. And we were able to just develop a good friendship first.
Yeah.
And then by that fall, I was starting seminary. She was finishing her senior year at Baylor University. And so I burned up the highway between Fort Worth, Texas, and Waco, back and forth.
I know all the back roads.
Yes. And, staying with friends, and just, it was very cool. And so it was a pretty quick courtship, if you will. We dated from like September, and then by like Thanksgiving, I'm like,
this is it.
I want to marry this girl.
Yeah,
I really probably knew before that, but I was like telling her, I'm going to set up an appointment to talk to your dad and your mom. And
an appointment. I like that.
Well, I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's sir, could you clear your calendar for me?
Yes. I didn't want it to be like this casual, and then, hey, by the way, you know that daughter of yours? I really think a lot of her.
Yeah.
It was awesome how it all came together. And by the next summer we got married. So how
old were y'all when y'all officially tied the knot?
I had just turned 25, and Leslie was,
don't mess this up.
About, she was 22.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So, anyway, it was kind of crazy.
It's ironic how God puts you in places. Like, you're sitting here going, I'm going down to this church, and here's where I'm going to kind of help out an internship and get my chops wet a little bit down in Corpus, with no clue, no idea of what's waiting for you down on the other end of this. Like, hey, well, we appreciate you doing this, and in the meantime, you're like, yeah, look what I got out of this, man. I came down here to get some experience, and I'm walking away with my future life. This is awesome. Like, you get to win on both sides of the coin there.
Oh, so it was a huge blessing. I wasn't expecting. As a matter of fact, my buddy Paul that was at that church, he was like, hey, we had a bad experience last year with the guy that came and interned for us. He had a girlfriend, and he was gone every weekend. He says, so we're asking you not to date anybody for the summer. And I said, man, that's no problem. Yeah. I don't know anybody. I'm new to town. I don't have any previous relationship that I'm stringing along. So I'm like, there's no problem. But anyway, first Bible study of the summer, I'm leading it, and there's Leslie. I'm like, man, maybe I made a mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but like I said, it was really a blessing in disguise. We got to really know each other, and then by the fall, we had logged a lot of hours doing all kinds of activities with the kids, and I had seen her in just some amazing serving roles just at the church. And so anyway, it was a great.
That's so funny, because I'm sitting there thinking, like, we're going to test Will just exactly how committed you are to the statement that you're making here. Yeah. God kind of slides Leslie over in front of you here. You're like, oh yeah, okay, that commitment that I made, let me stick on that for a little bit here. Let me hold out as long as I can. So.
There were a few of the church ladies that had already kind of had that in the works. They were definitely, they would kind of nudge me, hey, have you met Leslie Bowers yet? Have you had a chance to get to know her? And they were definitely trying to.
They were Tinder before Tinder was cool, right?
They were trying to set it up. It was definitely the church lady Tinder. Yeah, that's right.
Oh my goodness gracious, man. Yeah, you want to talk about the original dating service. That's
the Christian mingle.
That's right, man. They are the ones that are like on the backside. This would be such a nice person for you.
Well, they were right.
Hey, man.
I thank God for them.
That's right,
It's awesome.
man.
I'm glad they meddled in my business.
So you knew from the get-go. I mean, you pretty much, this is it. This is being placed in front of me. Leslie's here for a reason.
Yes.
I'm glad I got the opportunity. Corpus, thanks. See you later. Chunk the deuces at them.
Yeah.
But this one's going to be in my life forever.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so you guys get married. How many kids you have?
We have 3 girls. Yep. And we have Lindsay that's just about to turn 23, Allie that's 20, and then Emily that's 14. Yeah. So Yeah.
And a marriage in the works here.
Yes. Our middle daughter, the 20-year-old Allie, she is getting married in about 60 days. So it's crazy. It is surreal saying that out loud.
I know. And
I mean, we've been planning it for 18 months.
Just wait till you get there, man. Just know, let's set all this out. Well, you're going to cry on wedding day.
Oh, man.
I mean,
I'm already crying.
It might be tears of joy. It might be tears of sadness. It might be tears of, okay, well, somebody else gets the handoff here, and now we're going to get all these extra things on the backside there.
No, I tell you, this is such a testament to my daughter, Allie. She just, the sweet consideration that she has for me. She's like, that day, on the wedding day, Dad, I just want you to be my dad.
Awesome.
So they're having somebody else officiate it. And at first, I didn't really know how to feel about that. I'm like, well, why didn't they ask? But she's right. I don't want to have to carry that.
You don't need that pressure.
Day. I just want to be there for her, and I just want to have fun.
Yes.
And just remember, her mother and I do. Whenever they say, who gives this bride away? If I can just remember my little line, that's all I got to do.
That's right.
I don't want to botch that one. But so if I can stop crying long enough to do that.
Don't carry your notepad with you. Don't have your notes over on the table or anything. It's like, I think I've got this one. I could probably pull this one out. And you probably need a bottle of water with you just in case. Because what's the rule of thumb? You can't cry if you're drinking a bottle of water or something. That's what I've been told. I don't cry a whole lot, but I've been told if you're drinking, when you feel that choking coming on, man, it's
a good tip.
It washes it right down.
I honestly didn't know that tip, but I'm going to carry it with me.
So I'm going to learn a ton of stuff about you, and I'm going to give you the water technique. That's what you're going to walk away with today.
Good, yeah.
All right, so Brazos Fellowship. Let's talk about how you come around to become a part of Brazos Fellowship, because it didn't start over near Wendy's off of Southwest. This is not, it's humble beginnings. Its humble beginnings started.
Absolutely. So we started it technically late 2004. It was right around, so the very first time we had a meeting in our home, it really kind of started at a little house church. It was in our home on December the 5th, I think was our first one. Leslie and I had just moved to town like right about Thanksgiving. It took us a little bit to kind of get situated, and I still had some loose ends I had to tie up. We were moving from the valley. We were down in Mission, Texas. I was pastoring a little church down there. And anyway, so we're moving up here, and I'm trying to being a part of a transition to a new pastor there. So we get here, we have probably about a dozen people in our home that first night. And we didn't really know hardly anybody in town. We just kind of knew a couple of couples. We had a couple of vision dinners that we knew one couple that was willing to host that in their house. And we just kind of had like a spaghetti dinner. We'll show up, and I'll share with you a vision for a new church. And, at that time, it was like, that was probably, there was one in September, and there was one in like early, or sometime in October, I think. It was about a month apart. And I mean, we didn't have a place to meet, had no money, had no people. I'm literally inviting them to an idea. I'm like, God,
Will's vision
put
dinner.
this on my heart.
That's
and
right.
I really believe it could happen, but it's scary, there was definitely some terrifying moments of like, okay, God, we're just going to go ahead and drive off this cliff, and we're trusting you're going to catch us.
So let me back you up a little bit.
Yeah.
What brought you here to College Station?
Okay, so how we got to this point, earlier that year, 2004, a buddy of mine, pastor, that's actually one of the pastors on our board, Bill Cornelius at Church Unlimited down in Corpus Christi, Texas, which there's a whole connection to the church that I met Leslie in, had called me to pray about going down there and planting a church that I did not feel released to go do.
In Corpus.
So in Corpus Christi.
Gotcha.
So I called my buddy Bill and said, hey, I think you guys should consider, he and his wife Jessica, going down there and just go down and check it out. And he had gone all over the U.S. He was trying to figure out where and praying through where he was supposed to go. And he wound up going down there. And I mean, it has been absolutely an amazing story of how God has grown that church. And one of the largest churches, for sure the largest church in South Texas now, and one of the more influential churches in the state of Texas. But anyway, he's still a dear friend, and but he was the one that called me when we were down in Mission, Texas, and just said, hey, would you be open just to pray about starting all over again? And we were like, well, yeah, actually, this is ironic because Leslie and I had been praying for a month or so and really told the soul, just like, God, if you want us to stay here, change this weird feeling in our heart that we feel like we're kind of we're being prepared to leave.
Right.
We're being prepared for something, a new chapter, a new beginning. And is that right, Lord? Are we getting that right? Like, if not, then change our heart. If you want us to stay here the rest of our life, we'll stay here. But if not, make it clear.
Yeah.
And I mean, a few weeks had gone by, and Bill calls me up out of the blue and just said, hey, like our whole kind of executive board of leaders at our church are been praying about this, and you are literally at the top of the list. Like, we want to plant a church. We want to help seed a church in the Brazos Valley and the kind of the Aggieland area. And we wanted to ask you first just to pray about, consider coming. And I go home and tell Leslie about it that night, and she cried, and she was just like, you really think God would do that for us? Like, I knew she was excited to leave. I didn't know she was that excited. And the church was great. It wasn't anything against the people. The people were wonderful. We had a great experience down there. It was awesome. But I think we just both knew God was getting us ready. And as we prayed about it, there was just more and more of that confirmation that God was. And then, of course, this call. So that was like in March, April. I think we had just had, actually probably April, because we had just had our Easter service, which ironically was the biggest we'd ever had. The church was booming. Like, it doesn't make sense to leave at this point.
Right.
Unless God's telling you.
Built all this up.
Yes.
And everything is showing positive trending.
Yeah. It's all going up and to the right.
Right.
Praise the Lord. It's all because of him.
Yep.
And, but we started praying about it then, and then we came to Aggieland probably in May, I think, was our first trip here, like physical. We hadn't even been here before. And we came and met with Ben and Cindy Betcher, and awesome, just really beautiful people God put in our life that had been praying about this too and wanted to be a part of it. And he was actually the architect that designed Bill's new building that they were getting ready to move into. That's kind of how it was all part of the story of God had pulled all these people together and that's even why Aggieland was on their radar.
And Bill and Cindy were already here.
Yeah,
right?
Ben and Cindy. They were already here.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I've got Bill from Corpus working with me.
We got a lot of bees going
Bill
on.
didn't come with me. Hold on.
But and so Ben and Cindy were so critical to us getting started, and then and as you know, Corey Ging, that's on our staff, is their son-in-law, and that's kind of how I met Corey, and he's wound up being he and his wife Amy are just dear friends, but also just an amazing staff member. And he was doing fish hatchery. He was doing like the furthest thing you could imagine from production at a church. And he's phenomenal at it, but it's just funny how God brought all these pieces together. So that was kind of the short story. And we came, and honestly, the first time we came, we kind of felt like it's either a not yet or maybe it's not at all, but we just didn't feel released to come. And we just continued to pray about it over the summer. And it wasn't until August of that year of 2004 that we felt like God was like, okay, I want you to go. Green light. There was lots of things that sort of came together. There was a successor for me at the church. There was just lots of different pieces that had to come together for us to feel like we're going to walk away, and I don't want it just to, crumble to the floor. And organizations, when they're in the first 2 or 3 years, they're vulnerable.
So I'm trying to do the math backwards in my head. You have 2 babies at this time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
That's
good.
I'm working it over here. I'm trying to figure this out.
That's good.
So that's the other, granted, I'm assuming if my math is correct, you probably aren't committed at a school at this point, or that was one of them going to school at that time.
Yes, our oldest daughter, Lindsay, was going to there was a little Christian school there that we were, Covenant Christian School.
Yeah.
It's probably still there. And we had a great experience there. But yeah, so she was, I think she may have gone to kindergarten, maybe first grade, or something like that.
I'm trying to put this in perspective. You and I have been married around the same amount of years, and I'm sitting there going, it's time for us to pack up. We're taking our babies with us. I mean, and you're going into a place. It's not like you guys walked into College Station and, hey, here's the building that we're planning on doing. I mean, it's like it starts in the house. And then it just kind of grows out of that. You end up having the Betchers kind of come in and work with you in this process. Then Brazos Fellowship is the vision that you're kind of pitching out during the spaghetti dinners and all that stuff.
Exactly.
And so how long do you go before there's actually this roadmap of, listen, we've got a location, we can now kind of work this process to start building a physical footprint for Brazos Fellowship?
Yeah, so it was kind of late in that fall of 2004. I mean, I would say, I can't remember the exact date, but it wasn't more than a month before we moved here that I actually got like a commitment from. I remember I drove all the way here a couple of times just for a single hour meeting with, I think it was Eddie Colson at the time, that was the deputy superintendent of the school district, and sat down with him and just kind of shared again the vision. I'm thinking, this guy may be willing to work with me. He may think I'm totally crazy. Like, he's just not, we don't need another church here. Why are you coming from South Texas to do this? And man, he totally got it and was willing to. He's the one that connected me to College Station Middle School on Rock Prairie Road, and with the principal and the faculty there, and we were able to develop a good relationship with them. And that's where we started. That was our first look in that cafetorium at that middle school, and then we had our kids area just across the hallway in the gymnasium. And if you're familiar with that school, there's this internally long hallway. It's like, feels like it's a quarter mile long. That was the most awkward part from the point where they parked to getting in the building. So we had to have like half dozen greeters down the hallway just so they didn't feel like
everybody's pointing.
Hey, you're still heading the right way. Come on down. But yeah, so we started on February 13th, 2005. So we were only in core group for maybe 2 months. And during that time, it might have grown from a dozen people to maybe about 25, something like that. So I tell people, I mean, especially church planters or pastors that want to start churches, like, I don't necessarily recommend doing it the way we did it. I knew me personally, in terms of my gift mix and my abilities that God had given me, that I do much better when we start having church.
Yes.
Like, I'm an okay a small group leader, but I guarantee you at Brazos Fellowship, most of the small group leaders are much better than me at leading a small group. I'm just not that great at it, and I just knew that I could do some vision casting, we can kind of get prepared, and we can get some training, but we need to start having church. Yeah. And so I just knew that was something that God had shown me through the years of pastoring.
Well, and that's a storyline for a lot of churches starting up, is that they're usually using some offsite location somewhere. It starts maybe somewhere small in a house, with a small group somewhere. It ends up in a location. A school's typically kind of a common ground for that, where they can utilize that on Sundays. Yeah. And then it then materializes. You see more and more people start kind of coming in. We were talking about how churches grow organically, more so from people just sitting there saying, hey, I go to this great church, or I've got this brand new church with a brand new pastor and his wife that just showed up, and we'd love to invite you. And it usually starts with an invite, or it starts with people talking about it. We're pre what Facebook, social media is and everything else. So it's not like you can just go on, I just tweeted about how great church was in the long hallway in the middle school, I mean, now all that process is working organically through people telling their friends and family. You start seeing more and more people start gravitating towards that. Yeah. And now it's, okay, the school's done great. We appreciate everything that they've done for us. And now we're looking to relocate that footprint. And you find the current Brazos Fellowship location, which was a nightclub, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. Yeah, it was called Times Square. And it was a crazy turn of events. We were closing in on about 18 months. Had just crossed over kind of the year. Well, yeah, maybe a little more than 18 months or so. We'd been in the school, and we knew, that is only going to last so long. Those are shelf life on, setting up and tearing down. Although a lot of great churches have done for years and years, but. So anyway, we started looking around, and our current location was one that we kind of were thinking about. One of the guys in our, kind of in our leadership circle called and checked on it, and the owners had that current club that was in there had like 7 years left on the lease, and they're trying to buy it, and so we were like, well, I guess it's just not going to happen. And so we just kind of treated it like a Jericho situation where I said, well, this is for the next month. Again, I'm not saying go out and do, this is going to work for you, but this is something that God used for us. If you're going to drive by there, at the time I was working out across the street at that Gold's Gym.
Yeah.
And so when I was getting ready to go to Gold's, I just drive through the parking lot and just pray, God, whatever walls need to come down for us to be able to get this location, I think it'd be a great one for Brazos Fellowship, but it's all up to you. There's no way.
I mean, you've already had me move across the state over here.
Yeah.
Let's work your next magic that you've got here for us.
This is easy for God. Impossible for me, totally possible for the Lord.
Absolutely.
So we start praying, and again, within about a month or so, we have. I actually was driving through there again to pray, and I saw like. Flatbed trucks trailers were all backed up to the front door, and they're like loading TVs and all kinds of stuff out of there. So I called this buddy of mine who was in touch with the attorneys that actually own the building, and just told them, hey, are they moving out? What's going on? And the owners had no idea, and a lot of that merchandise belonged to them. And they said, oh, thank you for letting us know. God gave us favor with those guys, and just said, thank you. We're so thankful that you called us when you did, let us know. And by the time I finished my workout, College Station PD was all in front, shutting down that little moving party. Anyway, he called us the next day and just said, hey, I'm going to be in town. I'd love to meet you guys if you'll meet me at the location. And he just said, make me an offer.
Boom.
And he had to owner finance. We had almost no money. It was ridiculous what we had to ask for. And the ACs were about to go out. We had to ask for about $50,000 worth of ACs. It was going to cost him so much money to sell us this building off the top. Anyway, we thought, well, we'll go ahead and ask. And he was willing to do it. It was amazing. Again, it's one of the biggest miracles of our story is how God brought that together. And so we got in there around August, I guess it would be of 2006, and we didn't really have a first service. We had to renovate. It was a bar. Yeah. And
I've seen the pictures of you and Ben and Corey and all in there tearing
and
everything
it smelled
out.
like a bar, it smelled like cigarettes and just disgusting and mildew, and it was not a great environment. Would not be conducive for worship.
Yes.
I'll tell you that. So anyway, it needed a facelift big time, and that's what we did. And we were able to hire some contractors. We did some stuff ourselves, and we had to do it in stages. We couldn't afford to do a whole lot at a time. And so, but by I think it was like the first weekend of November 2006, we had our first public service in the building, and it was just packed to the gills, and it was just so. It was just a confirmation that God's like, I'm with you. I'm going to take care of you guys.
Build it, I'll bring them.
Yep. And so then over the next, I want to say, that's 2006. So over the next like 5 to 6 years, we went to 5 consecutive services on Sunday.
Holy cow. Filling
up one after another. And again, I tell people we started as a little house church. This wasn't necessarily like, hey, this is what we want to have 5 services on Sunday. It was just a necessity to be able to not turn people away, and we wanted to continue to reach people. And by God's grace, this is what we were allowed to do. It was a privilege And that's something that's been a core value of ours from the very beginning, was that it's a privilege to get to serve and to work here. And I thank God all the time that we have such a generous, loving, amazing staff of people at Brazos. I've worked at a lot of churches, a lot of big churches. I've never seen anything like it. They're just an amazing group of people.
There is no doubt. I mean, because I serve on the serving team there, and I've gotten to know some of those people that you're referring to. Most of those people probably that you're referring to. I mean, there are some unbelievable talents that you have in the backside that really take a lot of the pressure off of you.
Yes, for sure.
And understanding their roles and what they play in, and they mesh so well together across the backside. It's a networking on the backside of the church. Most people never even get to see.
Yes,
they walk in and they've got their kids with them, and they take it to children's ministry. There's let me back that up. They take their child. Let's don't refer to their child as it here, Lowell. They take their children to kids ministry. All of the things on the backside that put that into play and I had a conversation with some of the welcome teams the other night where I said, if you watch somebody walking into our church and they're walking in with small children, while we want to impress everybody that comes through the door and treat them and give them, I refer to it as exceeding their expectation. People have an expectation when they go to a church, right?
Yeah, right.
And you exceed their expectation. The reality is when they walk in with children, if I'm walking in with my daughter who's going to go to kids ministry, I really am evaluating what's going on with the interaction with my child, more so than the interaction with me.
Yeah.
And then, because I want to know, hey, I can go to service. My child is over here getting the best fed into her by volunteers in a lot of cases.
Yes.
That are back there that are talking to her about Jesus and about God and pouring into her and growing her, so that then I can go in and get the message that I need, to spiritually lead my family, to be a part of growing Jesus and God in our household with my wife.
Yes.
And so these people are amazing people that all understand their role in the bigger picture of everything. Mm-hmm. And so when people walk in, that's a big deal when they walk in with their children, is to go, I need to make sure first and foremost that they're going to be taken care of.
Absolutely.
And then that just takes the weight off of everything else for them. Now, for the younger groups that show up, because obviously we're in College Station, Texas, we're surrounded by a few young people here in town, giving the opportunity again to have a church that mirrors up and has veins available for all groups, right? Like we were talking about what the church's mission statement is, to bring people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ, right? Yeah. And so, but really what I see and where I see your leadership come into place is this is a place for everyone.
Right.
We're not building a church that's specific to any individuals, any specific groups, any specific demographics. Everyone belongs in church. Right? Whether it's Brazos Fellowship or whether it's another church somewhere around town, we just want you as close as we can get you to God. And if you feel far away right now, we'll work on helping you get closer in if you come in. Because the big thing about folks who show up at church is you either have people that are looking to plug in, they're maybe coming out of a particular situation where they've moved from Del Rio or wherever, and they're trying to plug in, and they're trying to find a location that fits their need. Right. And everybody's need's a little bit different, obviously, but it fits what they need. And then the second part of that, and you've referenced this in a lot of your sermons, is people go into church, and there are people who stay away from church because they feel like, I'm not worthy enough to even be in there. Mm-hmm. Like, y'all don't know what I've done, or you don't know my background, or you don't know what kind of life I've lived. And you make an effort at the front side of that to say, we don't care. Like, we don't care. As long as you're here, that's where we're going to be able to pour into you. Yeah. And we want you to be a part of what we've been blessed with by continuing to grow your faith.
That's right.
And people show up to church, and this is probably a huge challenge, and it's definitely a stigma. You and I were both saying that we grew up in Baptist church, right? Yeah. And the way the messages were given, back then, whereas, I was telling you, you walk in, you pull your hymnal out, they've got the hymnals listed on the wall. We're going to sing these 3 songs. Open your Bible. I'm going to read exactly to you from the Bible, and I'm going to give you a quick message on that, and we're going to leave. And I'm looking at the elders that are around me dude, this is their life. Like every Sunday, they are Johnny on the spot. And then after we're done, we're going to go back and we're going to cook and we're going to have a potluck and we're going to do all this other stuff. But as a kid, I was sitting in there and I was telling you, there's no such thing as kids ministry at that time frame. And you're sitting out there going, oh man, like, when is this going to be over? You know, I wasn't engaged as a kid in church. I really felt like it was a box that was checked that I had to go along because my mom was going to drag me. I had to wear my Sunday best. You know, it was an event, right? And for the family cycle back in the 70s and 80s, kind of dating ourselves here, but you know, 70s and 80s, as you're going back in there, this is what we have to do because we believe in God, and this is just what our family does every Sunday. And so when I get married, now I'm looking for the church that is pouring out a message that's relatable to me, that I don't have to ask Siri what the pastor just said. Can you interpret what part of the Bible just got read to me? I needed it put into a fashion that I can understand it and it be applicable in my everyday life. And I think that's really where your sermon prep and everything else, you do a great job of coming in, putting the message down, and really going above and beyond to make that current. How does this apply to your everyday life right now? I know how it applied 2,000 years ago, and I know what all was going on back then. But you know, today, how does that affect me, and how can I utilize this message to grow my faith? But it is for a lot of people getting over the hump of maybe they've had bad experiences in previous churches. Maybe they've had bad experiences in their own home as to how they were raised, and maybe their parents didn't believe, or maybe their parents didn't view that as a priority. And now that they've maybe gone on later in their life, they're now trying to prioritize that. But again, it's that same point of walking in and going, man, you know, how do I walk into something I've never been a part of and feel comfortable where I'm at? And so, you know, I work up on the front side. I get to see people as they walk in through the doors, and we try to make that effort to take down those barriers for people. You see people kind of walk in we'll talk about COVID in a little while, but you know, the way that we were doing check-in and everything else, and now that we've kind of moved back away from that, the check-in process actually was a huge plus for the church. Not just in the way that the church wanted to make sure everybody felt safe and it was accountable and we could get a hold of people if anything happened. But it was the idea that every single person had to come to these kiosks to check in. Now all of a sudden I'm half face to name, you know, because everybody's wearing their mask, but you get a more one-on-one attention to people. Now all of a sudden I get to also see people like, hey, is this your first time here? Well, yeah, actually it is. Great. We're so happy to have you. Let's show you around a little bit, because you're walking into a church, and what are going to be the first probably two things you're going to want to know? Where's the bathroom at? And where am I supposed to go to service at? Show me those two things, and we'll kind of work through the others. But then also making a concerted effort on the backside to follow up after they're done. Not to, listen, I don't want to be the did you like it? Did you like it? Did you like it? Are you coming back? Are you going to be back next week? It's really just, listen, man, you know, we're happy that you're here. I want you to have the best possible service that you can have, but I think more so than anything else, people want to be recognized. They want to know that their presence matters for something. You got some people that walk in there and just like, listen, man, I am here to get the message that I need for this week, and I'm going to move on. And you know how those folks operate. But when you can make connections with people, when it's personal for them, and it's more than just checking a box, that's really where I think Brazos Fellowship really works hard to try and remove that obstacle from people, where it doesn't feel like it's something you got to do. It's something you want to do. Like you want to be here because you know that God is moving people inside of those four walls. You know that there's something special going in there, relationships being built, avenues for people to be able to plug in different formats, not just Sunday service, where they can go to small groups, they can get their kids linked into things. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens on the backside that people don't get to see necessarily until they're in as a part of coming to service and seeing all of the things that Brazos Fellowship does. So I commend you on bringing that to current. I mean, even if we go back to 2006, the way the church looks today as opposed to where it was 2006, it's a constant evolution. I mean, so as we kind of move in, you got some great leaders that are on the backside as well too, who assist you almost directly. Other pastors that work in there, and I kind of just made a few names of some folks. So I put down Sean Parrish as one.
Yeah. Sure.
You know, I've got Sam Griffin and Chris Shepard.
Yes.
And we kind of, you know, in pre-prep, we were talking about those three guys specifically. And it's so funny because, you know, they all serve a purpose to the church that's different than your purpose, even though these are guys that can pastor and they can sit there and say, hey, Will, I know you're going to be out this week, so I got service next week. I'm going to take care of that, and I'll head up the sermon prep for it, and you go spend time with your family, or go be a part of a wedding, or whatever that's going to look like for you. Yeah. But each of those guys bring their own, almost their own identity into that role as well too. Yeah. So, you know, I look at Sean. Sean may kill me for saying this. Sean, I'm waiting for Sean to bring back, because he's really trying to bring this back, like rolled up pants from when we used to be in high school. And
he's hip.
And no side. He is, man. Let me tell you. I mean, I see hip. Sean every day. I'm like, wow, man, let's go. Let's do this. You're bringing back some old school stuff here.
He's pulling it off.
Yeah,
man.
And then
looks good.
And then Sam, you know, Sam's kind of my spirit animal. We both kind of have a similar story. Sam is very good at just kind of, he hits the ground running with his messages. And then Chris is interesting because Chris is plugged into the younger group.
Yeah. He's our college pastor.
Yeah, I mean, any guy that's going to get up on stage and talk about his Jordans and, you know, put his shoes up on the table and everything. I mean, this is a guy who he knows what younger folks are looking for, even though he's in a transition of his life where he's got, you know, babies and everything else. And
absolutely.
But he is the forefront, really, kind of the catalyst that's plugging into that college age student. And really getting them plugged, because there's a lot of college age students that are coming to town who don't have a support system. First time maybe away from home, they're homesick. They need a place to plug in. They need a place to kind of call their own that's safe. That might not be a good word to use, but especially in today's environment, but that is safe and conducive for them to feel like, I can go to this group, this person, and these are going to be people that will support me while I'm here for 4 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, depending on how their college ages are going there. So you got these guys that feed back into the church and really kind of help support you on the backside as well too. And so in the leadership, the other thing that I looked at in your style of pastoring the church, and I wrote it down on here as preaching through, not to. So the way that I looked at that is in some cases, the pastor puts themselves up here, and then they're pastoring to you guys who really need Jesus down here, like here's why y'all come. Y'all come to get the message or whatever. And it's more, and I especially experienced that at a younger age, it felt more to than through, right? Okay. In your world, the way that you pastor back to people, it's more so like, I have heard you multiple times on stage go, listen, man, wherever the center line is at, make sure you leave me spot one, because I'm going to jump in that line. I'm the same as you guys. Like we all own this stripe that we have to carry.
For sure.
And you definitely don't put yourself in a role of sitting there saying, because I do this, or because this is my status within the church, somehow I am better than anybody else. Right. I told you one of the hardest things that I thought in this process of interviewing you would be to pull you away from the stage to get you to talk about Will, right? Will the man, Will the husband, Will the friend, all of those things that people don't necessarily get to see you in a weekly spectrum. They get to see you up on stage in a preparational world that's your comfort zone. Yep. There is no place that Will Lewis fits in and can hit the gas and go than up on stage after he's prepped his sermon and ready to roll. Well, unless you put him on a mountain bike.
Ironically, it may seem that way, but that has been a process for sure.
So backside of that, and again, these are things that I've learned kind of being in the church serving. It was knowing that you humble yourself enough as well to know that, listen, because I poured into this sermon that I'm giving this week, this doesn't necessarily mean this is the be all to end all. I want feedback from these other guys who support and back me up, who sit out there, they take notes, they're listening to your sermon from the 8:30 service, and then they go back and meet with you, and you're asking questions. You're back there going, hey, listen, tell me, I was 10 minutes over. So like you were saying in pre-prep show, like where can I either trim back and cut back here? Yeah. And in some cases it's there may be something that's obvious that they can feed back to you that you're in the moment of giving that sermon, and they're going, look, this may be able to go, you may be able to look at this, or we can maybe shore this up by saying this as opposed to this roundabout. But then on the backside of that, they also come to you and no, Will, don't shore this up, man. Like, this is God speaking today for sure. You need these extra 10 minutes or whatever. And so I found it really incredibly humbling that you allow those guys basically to pour back into you, even between services. Yes. To sit there and say, listen, man, what can I do different? Did this tone come this way? This is how this was intended. Like you said earlier, like I thought this was really funny, but not a lot of people laughed when I said that. So you've got such an eclectic mix though of guys that are supporting you on that backside to pour back into you. Yes. But you were also talking about kind of keeping that to a minimum, like not having a whole bunch of people. Like if everybody, listen, if we took emails from everybody that wanted to tell you how you should have pastored that week or whatever, we might be running through a bunch of stuff sometimes. So. Right. But now all of a sudden you got guys that you trust that they're going to pour back into you to make that next service that much better. Like each one is, we're going to run this, see how this goes, and then let's shore these things up. And at 10 o'clock, we're going to be ready for this, or we're going to pull these things away. So I thought those guys were extremely valuable, but they all carry their own weight in their roles of what they do within the church. So absolutely. Yeah, and the main staff member that helps me with that is Corey Ging. Yes. He is also super instrumental over all of our production, television, internet, all things, like all of our at the movies production, everything. That's Corey Ging. Yeah, he's good, and he kind of culminates a lot of that, and he and I will sit down most of the time. Sometimes it's Sean. Every once in a while it's Sam, but it's been a long time. Sure. But anyway, they help a tremendous amount, and that really speaks to a part of our culture at Brazos is that, at least on our staff, we crave feedback. We really see the value in it, and there's I want to say an art, but there is a skill to giving good feedback, to be able to encourage, make sure you're really encouraging. That's the main job of feedback, encouraging the stuff that's really good. Nobody wants to get just a barrage of how you could have done it better. Yeah. I mean, especially if you got to do it a couple more times the same morning. That's a beat down. I always referred to it as accentuating the positive and mentioning the negative, right? Yeah, like, you kind of have to, I mean, you need to talk about it too. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to say we don't talk about, we obviously do talk about it. I want to say real quick too, going all the way back to your Southern Baptist comments, because we did both grow up. Right. Just real quick, for those of you who may be going to a Southern Baptist church out there, there are some great, amazing Southern Baptist churches that are doing incredible ministry, killing it, and amazing. So I just want to make sure you understand our heart that the church that we grew up in doesn't really reflect, I would say, the majority of churches, especially the ones that are still reaching people and are doing great ministry, especially in our community. There's a lot of good personal friends of mine that pastor Baptist churches that do amazing work. And I appreciate you stepping back on that as well too. Plus, let's not forget to mention that I was 6 at that time. Absolutely. I mean, it was a different era for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So, while I appreciate my kids' comments, sometimes they are just, comments that go by the wayside there as well too. So in the church's responsibility here within Brazos Valley, and I really say Brazos Valley because it's not just Bryan College Station. You guys are kind of working around the outskirts as well too, because the goal for Brazos Fellowship is to be a place for people who can rise up to meet the needs of folks, right? And so we talked earlier in prep about, people looking at the church as kind of this guiding post. Like, here's the, I guess I would look at it as like the lighthouse, right? You're sitting here casting a light to people to let them know, hey, we're here if you need us.
Right.
But we're here even maybe when you think you don't need us.
Yes.
Like, we're here to be able to point you in directions, to network you into people. Mm-hmm. And that's not just necessarily for the folks that are attending service or that are members of the church. And I use the word members loosely because it's not like, they all come in and we give them cards and stuff. Okay, you're officially in the club, right? It doesn't work that way. But the way that I see that as well is the church is a steward of what comes into it, right? And so we were talking about when people walk into the church and there is a pull from God to know that, hey, listen, tithing and everything else is a part of what we believe in as well too. But as you give back, we want you to be able to know that the money that you give back, we are stewards of to ensure that it hits in places that affect people locally, that affect people who come to seek our help, and that we rise up to meet the people's needs here locally, who maybe it's even a point of they can't get to us because there's an obstacle in the way for them to be able to get to us. Yeah. And it can be something as simple as a ride or something as simple as, clothes or whatever. I mean, we tend to think in a box window that everybody has access to church, right? Like there's churches on corners that you can get to and everything else. But it's also breaking down the mental barriers that are also with people as well too. And some of those mental barriers are tied into financial responsibilities or in some cases, where they can't necessarily get certain financial needs met in order to put themselves in a situation to be able to attend church. Mm-hmm. And this year with COVID coming through and everything else, the church was able to go online with more of an online presence. We were kind of talking about before we officially kind of shut everything down and everything had to go 100% virtually, that the online presence for the church was there, but not near to the level of what it had to go to in 2020 with COVID.
Absolutely.
And so we were discussing like that first broadcast that went out, and you kind of just think of, okay, well, we've got all the stuff that we really need to do this broadcast. And then you realize like everybody in church is all dialed in, all, streaming into this one service that's being put out. And, I'm sitting there looking across the hall, man, there's 600 people on this one, and there's 350 people over on this site, and there's another one pulling in here at 400. And you're like, that's a lot of people watching. And then all of a sudden that first one, it starts getting a little glitchy and all this kind of stuff. And but then within like 7 days, you were talking about how your production team stepped back. Yeah. Y'all ended up networking with churches who were already in that avenue, like full bore. Yes. And then they're going, hey, here's some things that you guys probably need in order to shore up these problems that you're having. Absolutely.
No, I'm sure it was like a lot of companies and people who share an industry. Those were the moments where it really pays to have friends that do what you do in other cities, that we could pick up the phone and talk to a dozen different churches that were doing the same, they're running the same issues, and we're all working on it together. We're sharing ideas, and man, you talk about accelerated problem solving. That was a huge blessing at a time we're all trying to solve the same problems at the same time. So, man, you get, 20 brains working on a problem. You figure things out a lot quicker. And so that was, it's a huge blessing. And that's one of the things that we've always encouraged on our staff. And I feel like we've gotten even better probably in the last 5 or 6 years of everybody on our staff is connected to their counterpart at many other churches. Right. And we're talking to them, and like I'm on a Zoom call with about 7 other pastors once a month, at least once a month. We chat a little more than that, but where we're all together once a month. And I mean, these are churches in the Chicago area. There's one in Northern California. There's one in New Mexico. There's one in Athens, Georgia. So, I mean, we have this swath across America. And it's so enlightening to hear them talk about doing church in those parts of the country. And they're all churches roughly our size. Some of them are bigger. Mm-hmm. But, it's, again, it's sharing ideas and sharing methodologies and praying for each other and just being there. And in some ways, that's kind of one of my small groups. Yeah. I mean, it's I learn so much from those guys. I get some of my best books that I read and sermon ideas. And I mean, it's just, God uses it a lot.
The assumption in the community sometimes, though, is that the resources are already there. They don't think about like how much resource it takes to put that out to that many people. Yeah. It's like, well, listen, I can go on my Facebook and go Facebook Live just like that, you know, not realizing the bandwidth that it takes to get all of those folks in on those avenues. But that also leads back, again, financially responsible, knowing that the church is going to have to upgrade things. But this also then opens the avenue of people. We already know that people can't come directly to church during COVID when we're really on lockdown and we're trying to kind of figure everything out. So we make an avenue, a pathway to get back to those folks so that they can still plug back into the church. Yeah. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I go, I wonder what it's like for Will to be up on stage. There's no audience. There's no like, you know, if I tell a joke here, you know, does somebody have a laugh button on their computer that they can like tell me I'm doing good?
I wish we had one of those.
You're like,
applause, laugh.
Exactly. Like give you the three little hand claps that go together and the emojis. And so it's a challenge really from your side, from the staff side of trying to figure all of this part out. How many people do we really need here so that we don't bring total exposure for everybody just staying in there? Because there were people who were working from home, serving the church. There are people who understand that like my role's not needed on site right now, but I can do some things outside over here that's helping the church to facilitate things through Zooms, through being able to dial in and see church. But this again also leads back to people that it may be a barricade for them that in order, I couldn't get to church before, but now we offer online service for you to be able to plug in as well too. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's an opportunity for you just to plug in virtually to see the message and see what we offer as the message of God is put down to people now on site again and also still virtually. We're living in two veins right now.
Sure.
And giving them an opportunity to almost test try it before they show up in person, right? And so the church's financial responsibility to these things, becomes about ensuring that no matter what it takes, we want to blaze a pathway to people to give them the opportunity to remove every obstacle that may be something that they can't do this because this obstacle, in some cases, perceived obstacles in the way, that we can then, open a pathway back to them to continue to grow the church and to continue to preach that message back to these folks virtually, in person. Again, we still do a lot of folks that are inviting people to church now that everybody's back in. But I'm sure also the process of bringing everybody back to church was probably nerve-wracking to an extent. I mean, because again, everybody can armchair quarterback it today because we know a lot more today than we did back in August when we were trying to bring it back up. And then you're sitting there going, as a pastor, I'm sure it's probably the same thing for us as a business. We don't want to be the source of anything that happens, right? Like we want everybody protected. We want to give everybody the opportunity to participate, but we don't want to be, square one of where a spread happens either. Yeah. And so that conversation again and talks of all of that was a challenge, I know, just trying to figure out, okay, how can we bring people back and help them feel comfortable coming back? Because I think that's still, here we are, we're working on, what did Max say the other day? He was saying like the 12 months or whatever, he says it's been the longest decade ever or something like that. It feels like it's gone on forever. But for us, it was also creating an environment, having to change the way we did things in church, and giving people this line of sight to come back. And right out of the gate, it wasn't like once we opened up, everybody said, yes, I'm going back to church. Everybody's kind of like, well, I'll let you go, and then I'll kind of just see how everything works. But what we've seen, though, from August opening back up and allowing people to come back is this steady incline of people who participate in person now, while still giving the opportunity to do it online. And so we asked people at the church to make sure they were still wearing a mask, and, that's a whole other topic in and of itself that we're not going to go down that rabbit hole on. But it's I think you described it well, where you said we have an obligation to ensure that we're protecting the community and the members of the church when they come in. So we're doing this to love our folks that are here. We're not doing this to tell you we're the mask police. We're not doing this to tell you that somehow we need to be able to say, pull your mask up over your nose or whatever. I mean, this is why we're choosing to do it as a church, and we want everybody to feel comfortable coming back. And so, and as again, we'll go another 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, and there'll be more clarity, plus vaccines and all this other stuff that's kind of coming into play that will continue to evolve that. But being in the other side of that, being the leader of that church and not having just a clear path as to this is what we got to do in order to open the church back up to get people back in here. How much pressure and stress was there on you for that? Knowing that you've got the virtual line still open, I mean, did you feel like the faster we can get people back, maybe the more normal it'll feel for people? Or did you go, listen, we got time in this. Let's really think this stuff through here.
We did kind of land on that side of it of waiting longer than most churches in our area. I mean, we were probably without in-person services for 5 months. And so when we did it, we wanted to really be like legitimately social distancing, really asking everybody to wear masks and cleaning, doing the full sterilizing between services and all of the things. And anyway, so just trying to be as careful as we possibly could, and then being diligent going forward to continue to do those protocols. And then of course now we have just recently, lowered that social distancing down quite a bit, and we're asking people to continue to wear the mask. We're not going to, police everybody, but we are asking them. I mean, there's still people, and I'm sure you may know, people watching this probably know. If you don't know somebody personally, you know somebody that knows somebody that has gotten COVID, that's either taken their life or they're hospitalized. Or I was talking to my brother yesterday, who lives in Austin, and a good mutual friend of ours that's been in the hospital for 3 weeks. And he's had COVID the entire time, and it's not great. It's not looking good. And so, and he's a guy my age. And so I just, I've had multiple friends that are close to me that COVID is really just ravaged them. And so it's serious. And so, and I get it. Most people who get it, get over it quickly and all that, but we want to plan for and be careful for those that are around us that are vulnerable and that are the ones that are going to be hit the hardest. And so we just need to plan for them and again, so I can speak on it. I have an elderly mom that I bring to church with me prior to all of this happening. You saw us all the time. We were in front row. I always find the front row is always open, Will. Nobody ever wants to go to the front row. So I always tell her, we're going to the front. We'll be the last ones out, but nobody ever goes to the front. It's your seat will always be available. Best seats in the house.
That's right. And even now, while, she's not immune compromised, so to say, but there's definitely some health issues and concerns that we have. And there's things where she's like, hey, when am I going to be able to go back to church? And we kind of talk through these things. She has the opportunity to stream it up on her TV.
Okay.
So again, virtual becomes huge for her. She dials in every weekend and is watching through this stuff and loves it. And she will call me like, hey, my connection's not working. What's going on? Like, is church going on? I go, Mom, church is always going on. Let me walk you through this process again. And so I can respect and understand why the church takes the stand on that. And for people who don't, we would much rather err on the side of caution. And maybe it's later than other people are doing it. And maybe it's a little bit more over the top than other churches that maybe you've been to. But the overall response for that is we're going to err on the side of safety and out of love for the people who attend church to make sure that they feel comfortable every week coming back. And that was one of the things, like in the first couple of weeks when we were opening and people were kind of coming in, it was, we had kind of like this little invite on the front side to see what it was going to look like. And then it became, okay, well, this makes sense. In the beginning, you're a little weird, kind of going, wow, that's really a lot of space in between people. And, we don't have this row in front of us anymore. And so we're going every other row and we're all sitting right here and, okay, all right, I'm getting it. And then But you started seeing it with people who were coming back.
Mm-hmm.
People who were coming back who were like, oh, okay, that's not near what I thought it was going to be. Then they start sharing the words with other people like, no, it's well planned out. They check you in, you check in for service, they check you in at the deal, they walk you down, they sit you, they know where you're going to be sitting. And so all of the thought process, and again, this is your team behind you that is putting all this stuff together and just literally taking the reins on that every week. And then again, talking about people who just are selfless in serving to ensure that the message that gets out when people are leaving churches, really, this is still safe. This is still the ability for us to be here. Going in between services and sanitizing seats and ensuring that everything is sprayed down and that it's ready to go for the next service. There's so many little behind the scenes things happening that people don't necessarily see between service to service. Yeah.
I would just say real quick, it's Leslie Allman and Lindsay Cox.
Yeah.
Those two women, rock stars. They're amazing. And they're, Leslie Allman was the one sitting down with all of those who were registering. Now, we've lifted the adult registration. We're not doing that anymore. But she had to basically figure out a seating chart every single Sunday for every single service. And
for every single person,
and try to predict who's going to show up and who's not. It is a lot of work, and she made it work week after week after week. And then Lindsay Cox being able to oversee all of our guest services and hospitality and ushering and parking lot, and those women just blow my mind with how well they organize all that. So,
again, the staff and the leadership behind you, man, that are propping up everything that really is at the forefront of everything. You're kind of here on the backside. You're going, listen, man, you guys are just, you're turning it out every single week. And I'm up here as the recipient of that, where they just get to come in and I get to share the message that I've designed for these guys to hear from God talking to me this week.
Sure.
So, I think the reason I want to spend a little bit of time on that is because there's probably still some people out there maybe that attended that are still kind of, what's really going on here? What are you guys doing? But then there's also folks who maybe have never attended that are sitting there going, okay, well, what does church look like today? COVID 2020, now into 2021, what does that look like today for us? And I think when people, and especially being behind the scenes and being able to see it a little bit more, to understand the extra steps and the extra precaution that's put into place at not just prevention purposes, but at the purposes of making people feel safe when they walk in, that they don't have to worry about putting themselves in an environment that, oh my gosh, is this going to be the next super spreader event, and that kind of deal. And again, the church not wanting to be the hub of any of that kind of stuff. So the church has done a great job. Again, I pat you and your team on the back for really kind of walking through a dark avenue, because there's no pathway lit into how to do it right? It's a lot of people coming up with ideas, maybe again, networking ideas and sharing ideas to be able to put this thing together in a time frame where the church really needed people to come back. I'm sure as a pastor, you needed people to come back. And then again, that just remember how excited you were at the first service, man. It was like, yes,
finally, people in the room.
Yeah.
That's a tough, that'll definitely challenge your stamina and your endurance to preach to a completely empty room, empty chairs for 5 months. But anyway, it was good. God uses all those things to grow us and sharpen skills and get better at what we do. And so anyway,
it was awesome. And I'm just glad. I'm glad to see people back in person. I'm glad to be a part of the team that welcomes those folks in.
Thank you.
And just be be a part of the church to just say, hey, listen, we got you. We got you. We're going to make sure you're safe today. Whatever you need, you let us know. There's such a great surrounding of folks on the serving team every week that pours into the church to really give this impression, not just to the folks who've been there for a while, but especially even to new people that are walking in. There's nothing more exciting to me than watching somebody go in and go, this is my first time here at the church. I'm like, whoa, I got you. We're going to get you taken care of. So, and then being able to plug them in those avenues that are going to be those questions. So, all right. So let's move on to some other stuff here.
Okay.
Let's move on to, we won't get on hobbies yet. That's going to be a little further down the road. Let's talk about your personal goals and accomplishments. We're talking about where you see Brazos Fellowship in the future, and we kind of were saying, that kind of dialed back a little bit in 2020.
Sure.
But now that we know that there's some light starting to show at the end of the tunnel here, we can see vaccines coming into place and things like this.
Yeah.
Where do you see Brazos Fellowship in this upcoming year as we kind of stretch through this, vaccines becoming more available? People now feeling hopefully more comfortable here in 2021, kind of working their way back into church in person again.
Yeah.
I mean, we're never going to go away from online. Online is I mean, you've invested in it. That's where we need to stay in that particular vein. But there's nothing like having people in person. And you're getting ready to come around here to Easter services.
Yep.
We're going to have 3 services for Easter. Now, by the time this airs publicly, Easter will already be over. But these are all things, again, that, you want as many in person as you can have. But what do you see for Brazos Fellowship this upcoming year? And then what is God putting on your heart for the next upcoming, 3 to 5 years that you see as growth for Brazos Fellowship?
Once you get to 5, I'll be honest, I don't really have any idea. But I would say the kind of immediate, maybe 18 to 24 months for sure. I would love to, really it's going to be taking steps to get back to where we were early 2020. Yeah. Ironically, we were set to break all records. I mean, through February going into March of last year. Yeah. I mean, it was attendance, everything was just phenomenal. And I mean, the good news is we've got lots of expansion room within the church, the facilities that we already have.
Right.
So as we are able to tighten up some of the rows and be able to open up more spaces, and we can accommodate more kids and open up, we're not even using all of our classrooms yet. We've got lots of spaces that we're not maximizing. So, I mean, we have plenty of room to continue to grow, lots of room for new families and singles and professionals and students and whoever happens to walk through the door, like you're saying. So I'd love to see us get back to, we were at 3 services. We're at 2 right now, and we're going to do 3 for Easter, but not maintain that just yet because it's a whole nother team of volunteers that we're not quite ready to sustain just yet. But I'd love to see us get to where we add back the 11:30. So right now we're doing 8:30 and 10 on Sunday. I'd love to see us do 8:30, 10, 11:30, which we're going to do at Easter, but we're going to hopefully be able to get that going and be able to maintain on Sunday. I'd love to be able to do that. And like you said, we're never going to take away online. That's the plan, and just continue to have that online service. I know that's worked really well for some people. And then there's some that, are homebound, or they're just different unique situations that require people to consume the content that way. And so I'm glad we have it available, and they can interact with us, ask questions, ask for prayer, be a part.
And those services are streaming it multiple times as well too. I mean, we do the one live, but then you're also streaming at 4 and 8 for the other one.
Well, we actually just changed that to where, so we stream it live at 10, and then it's just available after that for any time. The only downside to that is that there's not a live service host, obviously, because it's whenever you want to start it. The live service host would only be at the 10 a.m. on Sunday. But they're free to email questions and call us anytime they want to, and we'll respond as quickly as we can. But anyway, so that's kind of how Sunday's rolling out. And but beyond that, I don't know. Once the facility that we're at is maximized, I could see us adding maybe some more services on Sunday, maybe even a Sunday evening, possibly even, there's a lot of churches, especially churches that are within those networks that I was telling you we were a part of, that have multiple locations that are streaming live teaching, maybe all the worships in person and all of the teaching for the kids and everything, but maybe just the preaching is streamed in. There might be a way to be able to experiment with that on a Sunday, to try a satellite type service. I don't know at this point for sure when or how we would do that, but the good thing is we've got lots of room to try some things.
Yeah. And some new resources that are available to us as well, too. Better understanding of resources that we have as well, too, for streaming online and things like that.
That's right.
All right, so it's time to take you off of the Brazos Fellowship pastor side. Now we get to learn a little bit more about you personally.
Okay.
So I'll break into this next one with some pretty easy questions that my daughter actually wanted to ask you. So I love it. I'd put out to the guys at Brazos Fellowship, hey, if y'all got any questions you want to ask, well, won't promise you that they'll get asked, but if you want to throw something back, and it was really last minute, and I didn't get much. So then this morning I got up and I said, hey, listen, I get to sit down with Pastor Will today and do a podcast with him. So what kind of questions do you want to ask? And I told you what one of them was. We'll leave that one as is. It was about TVs and stuff, of course, stuff that you'd get from a 9-year-old. So I recorded these 3 questions. We'll open up with those, and then I've got some pretty interesting questions that I want to ask you.
Okay.
Just so we can get to see Will the man, Will the husband, Will the friend, all of the things kind of away from the stage and from the church that maybe people don't necessarily get to see in the light of. So let me give you this. My daughter's name's Abigail, and so I'll give you question number 1 here. Here we go.
Awesome.
Morning, I'm Abigail. I have a few questions. 1, what is your favorite color?
All right, my favorite color. I think, now it's funny, I don't know, this may be a gender thing between men and women, but when I think of color, I think of like, what color do I like on a car? Or I love mountain bike. What kind of mountain bike color do I like silver. I love silver, and like on bikes, I always like the raw titanium, the raw aluminum, the raw carbon fiber. I like to see the striations. I like that. I don't know. I kind of like that a little more.
So I got to jump in on this question. I did not tell you I was going to ask you this as a part of the question.
Okay.
So when I worked in this is going to sound terrible. I'm going to say I worked in a professional environment. This is back when I was with Walmart. I kind of in a professional environment now, but obviously you can tell my work clothing has gotten a lot more laxed over the years. So in Walmart, man, I had, dress shirts and ties and all this other stuff. And listen, I'll be the first one to tell you, man, my wife picked my clothes out and I wore what she picked out. The only thing I ever picked out that was my choice was my shoes. And so I have a really big problem with shoes. Now it's more of a problem with like athletic shoes. It used to be like Johnston Murphys, things that I stayed on my feet all day on. So do you do a good job of dressing each week? Like sharp, ironed up. But my question is, are you picking your clothes out or is Leslie picking your clothes out?
I would say, honestly, it's kind of a team effort. I definitely run it by her. I would say 90% of the time I'll say, hey, what do you think? Does this work? And she'll say, let's try a different shirt. Let's do a different. Yeah, it's funny. Just recently, and I mean, people might think this is kind of funny. We as a family, the girls really were really interested in finding out, how you can find out your color. You're like, are you an autumn? Are you a winter? Are you a summer, spring? That's never even been like I wonder what I am.
What season do I coordinate with?
Well, there are people that can do this for you, that can kind of drape, different colors under your face. And so all the girls were like, let's all go do that together. Dad, you should come with us. So I just recently did that. We did that all together as a family. That was like a family thing we did. We got our colors done. I don't know if that's even the right way to say it. Got draped.
Listen, man, you showed up in this shirt today, and you were like, well, and I said, you kind of blended into my background a little bit.
I wasn't expecting to be on video or against this background. But no, so to answer your question, sometimes the girls help. I've had the girls pick out ties for me or something. And I don't wear a tie very often, but when I do, I want it to, pop a little bit. Yeah. So, but yeah, Leslie's really my go-to. She's my fashionista.
I mean, I wasn't putting 100% on Leslie. If it were left to me, I'm the guy that's like, hey, it's blue, it matches. My wife's like, you kind of need to contrast the blue a little bit. You don't go all the same color.
You want a complementary color.
Yeah, I'm not good at that stuff, man.
Yeah, no, I
let her pick it out, put it in the closet. I wear it. Now, I just get to kind of pick stuff from here, and I'm a little bit more casual. I can dress casual a little bit better than I can dress. So, all right, well, let's go to question 2 from Abigail here.
Question Question 2. What is your favorite animal?
My favorite animal. Yeah, that's a good question. We have a variety of animals at my house. We have this kind of lab mix chow dog that we got from what do you call it? It's the
animal shelter.
Yeah, it's shelter.
There
Thank you. Over on Leonard Road. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. The girls, we did this years ago, and she's still with us. Ginger, sweet dog, like literally the best dog we've ever had. And people have told us that when you rescue a dog, it's like they know. They're so grateful.
Oh, yeah.
And she's amazing. We also have a bearded dragon named Oprah Beto. I don't know. You have to ask my daughter. She's the one that named it. And then we have 2 sugar gliders.
Wow.
Yeah. Lawson and Neo. No. Oh man, I'm drawing a blank. I'll have to come back to that one. we have a chinchilla named Bella. And the chinchilla has had one heck of a year. We've had to take her to the vet. We've probably spent more on the one animal than maybe one of my daughter's educations. Not really, but it feels like it. Anyway,
are you able to claim your household as like zoo or
weird.
Something along this line? You got a lot of different.
It feels like it. Yeah, we have. It's a lot of fun, but it is a lot of. We had a lot of thought goes into.
Yeah.
Like when we were out of town, like this last week, the girls were on spring break, so we left town for 4 or 5 days. We have to get a vet student. I'm not kidding.
No,
we get a vet student.
I totally get it.
To come to our house.
Yes.
And take care of these animals. I mean, you almost have to have a zookeeper.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, probably our newest animals are those little sugar gliders. Yeah. They're really cute little things, and they climb all over the place. And
whose idea was the sugar gliders?
This is my daughter, Emily. Okay. This is what she's wanted them so bad. She couldn't even have a conversation with you about them without crying. She wanted them so bad. I mean, and she waited for years until we finally said, okay, we're going to get the sugar glider. She cried. And so anyway, it was
And you went all in, you got 2.
We got 2.
Yeah.
Well, so the deal is you learn that they're very community oriented and they don't do well alone.
Okay.
You have one alone, they don't live very long and they don't, they're like cantankerous old men or something. I don't know, but they don't behave very well. So when you got them a little buddy, they're
I was really hoping you were going to say it was your idea. I mean, I needed a sugar glider.
I didn't blame it on Emily. No, but they're really sweet. And when my girls hear this, they're going to think it's funny that I said I think they're one of the cutest animals that we have. Yeah. I don't play with them a ton, but
just envisioning
they're
you
really
like
cute.
Sitting in the chair and here comes one flying on top of you. Like
they're really brave. They will jump off all kinds of stuff. You have to be really careful because they'll disappear.
Yeah, and they're not big, right? I mean, they're
pretty
small,
little. Their bodies, their bodies are probably about the size of your palm, and then they've got a tail on them. Yeah, and they're more like a monkey than they are mammal.
They float them out and just glide through your whatever they jump off of.
From person to person. Yeah, they're funny.
Listen, this is something I did not expect to hear from you. I expected a dog.
I love Ginger. Yeah. She's probably the one that I spend the most time with.
Yeah, bearded dragon. Yeah, I can. Yeah. Sugar glider was. You could have gave me a million guesses. I would not have shown up.
They're really cute.
That's awesome.
But anyway, so.
All right, so third question. Okay. You got to hear the first 2. You didn't get to hear this one. So your daughters are really going to love this question when it comes out. So this was Abigail's final third question. So let you hear this. Okay.
Question 3, the last question. Have your daughters ever put makeup on you and made you play dress up?
I'll have to say there have been a few times that yes. Not very often though. I can't say that I've been like made over head to toe like I've seen some guys. Yeah. Maybe I just don't sit still very well. But I've gotten a little bit of that. I've had my fingernails and toenails painted from time to time. But
The
just
thing
a handful of times. Yeah.
I mean, you have 3 girls. I have 1
Yeah.
girl, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing I've learned, Will, is I'm a really ugly woman. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, there is not a good shade that fits on my face, and
you just don't know your colors. You gotta get your colors done.
I need to know what my seasonal colors are. We're gonna have to get back at this. Next time you go, let me know, and I'll tag along for the makeup part of it or whatever. So
that's funny.
All right, so I thought those were good icebreaker questions to kind of break into this other one here. And listen, I'm learning new stuff already with these, with these flying squirrels you got going around your house and everything. So, all right, so some serious questions, and these are questions I kind of put in as more thought provoking things that I think maybe people who are listening who don't know Will really probably haven't maybe given a lot of thought to. And so I want to give you an opportunity. I'll let you read through some of these, but first question in was what's the hardest part of pastoral ministry?
That is a really good question. It's if I were to, there's probably a couple things that tie in here, but I think a good overarching way to say it is, in some ways, when you're trying to help shepherd people, you're trying to help guide their life. And I'm sure if you're a coach or you're a teacher or you're somebody that fills that kind of role in people's life, you have felt this before. A parent, if you're a parent at all, you've felt this, that you have seen the scenario that somebody's going through so many times, you can play the movie. You know how this movie is going to end. You warn them, you love them, you can say it till you're blue in the face, but some people just will not change until they go off the cliff. Yeah. And it is brutal to watch people hit the wall. And it breaks my heart. I mean, I get a little emotional just talking about it. It's just hard. And you walk with people through really hard things, and I guess the other flip side of that is really great people that have been really faithful to God and really been just such a model in their walk with the Lord. And some of those people get dealt really, really hard circumstances, and you walk with them through, and to watch them, even though it's a triumphant thing, watch them rise above and have such a incredible spirit, incredible heart. One gentleman in particular right now that in my life that is going through some just unbelievable health issues. And I got another text from him this morning telling how he was praying for me and how he's encouraging me, and shared a scripture that God put on his heart today that he wanted to just share with me. And I'm just like, where are people like that?
Yes.
Unbelievable. Just, you cannot shake them. I mean, you can throw the worst, most grotesque, horrible circumstance, and man, they're just rock solid in their faith. And it's hard to watch them have to go through that, but it also inspires me and encourages me so much. So I think both ends of the spectrum, people, bad circumstances that are happening to really good people and to people that should know better. They know better. Know better, and they don't do better. And that is really, really hard, and you can't make those decisions for people. I wish I could push them out of the way and say, let me take the wheel for a little bit. You're about to wreck the whole family, and sometimes it just happens. Yeah. And so I would say that's probably the hardest part of pastoring.
Well, and I would imagine also in some of those cases, it's probably tough as a pastor to, you're pouring in life lessons, you're pouring in God's lessons, trying to pave a way for the lost, trying to show some light at a tunnel that just seems like it goes dark forever. Yeah. And almost to an extent, a pastor, especially if it's someone that they've known for a long time, being emotionally invested in that is tough. I mean, it's tough because it's like you were saying, you want to be the voice of wisdom to go, listen, I promise you, if you do these things, this will help you. You'll see a light much faster than turning down that way and going that direction.
Yeah. You want to say nobody ever comes back from that.
Yes.
Never, not even one time.
Right.
It always ends badly.
Yeah.
And you can tell people that over and over, and they're still going to, no, I'm going to be the guy.
Yeah.
I'll be the first exception.
Or even personal situations where maybe you've gone through it yourself and you're sitting there going, listen, like, I've been here, done that. And I've got the record, let me tell you how I got through this. I mean, there's several things that occurred in my life that I use to minister to other people who, being in retail, you spend a lot of time, not just, everybody thinks of retail is go do this, go build this, go, finish this. And really you spend the part where I felt like I thrived the most there was people, like taking care of people, developing people, but that also meant being available for people.
Right.
And some of the ugly, you have to be available for the ugly too. And, for as much as you're kind of like, got my own problems over here. It is the idea of building, again, a soft pathway for somebody to step forward on.
Yes.
But frustrating from the standpoint of trying to take a hand and guide and go, I don't think I'm really ready to do that. I'm good over here, but not that one. So I can understand the frustration there. What's your average amount of time that you spend in sermon prep each week?
Wow, that's a good question. It's not always the same, but I would say, it's hard to tally it all up. I would say at least around 15 to 20 hours, probably closer to 20 plus, honestly, because I like to work on it in the evenings. I circle back to it a lot. Like for me, I can't just write an outline and go, okay, I'll forget about it till Sunday. Like I want to live with it for a while, and I want to think about it, and I want to make sure this is really important to me. Am I practicing this? I'm going to make sure that I am living with this before I go try to put it on somebody else. And really, for me, writing a sermon is more than just content on a page. And I really want to work with it, think about it, talk to some other people about it. I want to read several books, all the passages that I can find that are relevant to it, and then distill that down. So anyway, to answer your question, I'm giving you a long answer, but just, it might be, I would say probably north of 20 hours, but that's including Saturday evening, going over it, editing down, changing up slides, and then even Sunday morning, there's probably another hour and a half to 2 hours before I even come out at 8:30. So it's just, it's hard. It'd be hard for me to tabulate unless I was literally writing it down all week long.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's not structured, obviously, like you're saying, because in some of these situations, I'm going to skip I will come back to the next question, but I'm going to skip ahead and I'm going to talk about networking with other pastors and churches. Yeah. In that networking process, does that also help guide you into maybe what future messages you're going to serve at the church? In other words, like I heard Pastor Mac this week going, so y'all are doing this, this particular series, and I'm going to steal the dog out of this and take it back to my church, So I'm wondering also, are there moments where you get inspiration from other pastors or other churches where you're going, that is a great topic that needs to be discussed?
100%. And you'd be crazy not to.
Yes.
Because there's so many wonderfully creative people that have really done the hard work of listening to God. Now, you want to make sure as a pastor that you're praying and hearing from God also but when I find content or series that really aligns with something I already see in our body that needs to be addressed, or something that God's put on my heart that I think could be a huge blessing and help accelerate spiritual growth in our church, I definitely, I try to be careful to make it my own.
Sure.
I think obviously you don't want to just carte blanche.
Plagiarize everything.
No.
Can you send me that script you had along with the slides?
Yeah. Let me tell you a story about my daughter, Abigail. I don't have a daughter named Abigail. But you just want to make sure that it's coming from your heart, and it resonates with what God is doing in your life, and it's coming from a place of authenticity, and it feels real and genuine. I always want to. That's really important to me when I walk out on that stage to deliver a message, that there is a burning burden from God. Like, it is, what I'm about to tell you is life-changing, and it is awesome. Like, it is one of the coolest, most amazing things I have ever heard. and I have to study to get there. You got to do whatever you have to do before God to get to that place where there is something fresh. And it gets challenging after a while, especially like we're about to get into Easter and Christmas messages. How many times? I'm 51.
Yes.
I've preached on the birth of Jesus and the resurrection of Jesus a lot of times.
Yeah.
But there is always something new and awesome and fresh and real and life-changing about that story that I haven't discovered. And I need to take the time. There's an old story about Billy Graham that even if he had preached on the same topic 100 times, he would always start with a fresh notebook pad, and just start over. Don't start from an old message. Start with something fresh.
Yeah.
Now, I may pull some things from old series, old message, or pull something from something else, but I want to make sure that that's fresh. And so that's important, but it also is very time consuming. So this is not a quick process. Now, I would say to somebody who's church planting or someone who is like out on the mission field and like you are addressing tons of people issues and you got lots on your plate, it would serve you well to have some pre-made, like ready-made messages that are kind of like won't take a ton of time, because not everybody's got the luxury.
Right.
I'm very blessed at this point in our church's development that I've organized my week and my schedule where I can spend that kind of time and still have staff meetings and meetings with other leaders and people that I disciple, and I want to fit all that in too. But the lion's share of my time is going into this 30-minute window when the most ears and eyeballs are going to be on what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
It's going to be televised. It's going to be online. It's going to be, you think about, and this is such a blessing, but it's also a unique capacity of this job that I do. You imagine one of the most stressful things you do, and it's going to be televised. Everybody's going to watch you do it, and everybody's going to have an opinion on it.
Oh, yeah.
And so you want to make sure it's good.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you've given your absolute best to it. You want to give your best energy. You want to give the best of who you are. You want to be performing at your highest level of engagement that you can. And so that's what I really try to protect each week, to do that. So anyway.
What about the challenge of finding, this is not in the question, but as you're talking, I'm kind of thinking about this.
Sure.
The pliability of your message. In other words, let's say we have a social event that happens in the United States or here in town or whatever, and something that people lean into because they're going, well, gee, I wonder what Pastor Will's going to have to say about that this week when we go in. And I know that's happened multiple times in the church where people are coming in and it. I mean, on the front, like, this is something that people probably have a lot of questions about, or where the church stands with it, or whatever the case may be. And that you have to then make, let's say you've spent 8-10 hours in that sermon of prepping it, but now you've got to make it pliable and open it up so that you can say, listen, I need to work this also into this message. Yeah. And I find it ironic that a lot of the times it seems like when it does, it really does kind of almost fit into whatever series we're in for the week. Yes. It almost fits in there as a part. And people are looking at the church for guidance and leadership, not only for their own life, but for the purpose of, how do I direct my children? How do I tell my friends and family about, this particular incident that's happened that I need guidance on? I've sought out guidance from pastor friends and things that have come up that I go, I don't think that I'm equipped to be able to answer this off the top of my head. I don't want to go search a bunch of rabbit hole YouTube videos, because we know how that's going to look. Next thing I do, I'll be a flat earther or something, and so I want to be able to give clarity and information in there. And then that really kind of almost rests up on your shoulders as a part of that sermon as well, too, to be able to say, hey, listen, let's look into God's word of what God says that we need to do here and what we need to do to make ourselves available or be present in this moment where this group or whoever may need us as a church or may need us as friends, to reach back to them to make sure everything's okay, or what can we do to be a part of solutions instead of a part of perceived problems. Yeah. So that pliability in your sermons really kind of, do you find that you're easily able to work that in, or is that something where you really need to go back to God and go, okay, help me guide in this message into the series we're working in?
I would say, and again, this is just, I have God to thank for this, but it seems like most of the time when an issue like that comes up, it is beautifully dovetailed into what I was already planning months in advance to talk about. It's almost like somebody knew what was going to happen.
Yes.
Like God was in control.
That's right. And you're pre-planned for
That's right. It's so cool. Now, not every time, but there are times where I need to maybe make a quick statement about something and just speak to that.
Sure.
And George Floyd was killed. We took some time. Like, we need to speak to this issue and talk to all of our brothers and sisters in this church and those who are listening in. And, we want to do that, and we will do that. Now, we're not going to speak to every political issue and every shooting that happens. Right. I mean, it's just, I think people get that. Like, I think there's a sense in which you've got to kind of be discerning about which ones are really impacting this community and the people that we're called to reach and touch.
Right.
And so anyway, so I would say I try to remain flexible down to the last minute, but I feel like most of the time it hits pretty well. So.
Well, and it bleeds back to that point of churches for everyone. We don't want to be exclusive. We want to be diverse. We need all of that diversity within the church to bring eyesight into clarity. I mean, in the George Floyd deal, and I won't go into a lot of detail on all of that, but I mean, the first thing you did was you reached back into the community and you were like, listen, we want to hear from folks that are impacted by this in our church ministry. Here's an email. We want you to drop us your story, things that you feel like we can improve on. I mean, it was really kind of opening the church up in an avenue where maybe a blind spot was sitting there for us where we're like, I don't know, we're all good and all that stuff. But then you start seeing the feedback coming back and you're going, maybe we can do better. Maybe we can look at this with a different, like you said, being humble enough to go, listen, if this is a problem with one, it may be a problem with more, or it may just be that we are giving the perception that we need to change.
Yes.
The perception part's it's really powerful in the church atmosphere because I've always defined perception as the truth in someone's mind. Such a great description. It's such a great description to that word. But at the same point, you may be doing things that's lending to that perception as well too. Yeah. So for you to step forward in that probably uncomfortable realm because it was real fresh.
Sure.
It was, right after the moment and everything. And again, people are coming to church going, okay, well, let's see what the church got to say. Yeah. Is the church going to address it at all?
Are they going to say anything?
Yeah. And so stepping forward into it, you understand. And again, I'm sure there's a lot of prayer and thought process in this to go, listen,
for sure.
I want to be respectful. I want to make sure that I don't do anybody a disservice in bringing this forward. But I also want our community and I want our church members to understand we're not going to shy away from it either. I mean, let's don't pretend there's not this elephant in the room that needs to be addressed or talked about. 100%. So I'm appreciative of that, and I'm sure a lot of our members in the church were appreciative of you stepping forward. And that's not the only time. Yeah. It's one that kind of comes to the forefront when we think about it. But at the same point, that pliability in your messaging and working that in there, it's like I said, it's ironic how most of these messages of things that happen within society tend to fall into a series that we're running into, like you were saying.
It is.
So let me back up, and the one that I skipped is how do you unplug? And so one of the things that most people don't put into perspective for pastors, I mean, you were talking about sermon prep being 15 to 20 hours, and that's average and not, in specific formats or anything along these lines. But you're on all the time. I mean, that's one of the things I won't talk about the email that I sent to you, but I sent you and Leslie an email talking about being on all the time and how appreciative I am of you guys giving away, because it really is, it's thought in the process like, you have your own life, Will. You're out here, you live your life outside of church, but the church is always at a grasp to you, even when it's family time for you and everything else. And when you're on, there's no such thing in a pastor's life as, this is me time, your time, or whatever. And so there's always this constant pull and reach back. And I know there are people and things that you've put in place to try and help with that. People who are fielding things who, maybe it's going to flip back to them anyway. Yeah. But in the process of this working up towards you, that it's maybe handled by somebody who has, even in some cases, a better capacity to handle it even than you may have. Yeah. And so in unplugging, when it's time for you to step away so that you can recharge your batteries, so that you don't run into burnout, so that you don't run into this constant pull, always 52 weeks a year on Will Lewis going, hey man, it's time to turn it back on, Will. It's Sunday, let's go. Tell me what unplugged time looks for you and how do you do that?
Well, one of the challenges I got early on as a young pastor, a mentor of mine, and I'll never forget how he put it. He said, you need to withdraw weekly. You need to withdraw weekly. You need to be able to abandon annually, and you need to divert daily. So put those in order: divert daily, withdraw weekly, and abandon annually. And so once a week, I really protect a Sabbath day. And for me, that's Friday, because the weekends I'm working. Yeah. And so I have a weird schedule. It's always made family time a little awkward unless I'm not preaching that weekend and we can plan something. But weekends are, I'm going to be working at least a half day on Saturday and all day on Sunday. And so it's just, weekends are just, it's just not going to happen. We're not going to. I can do something on Saturday morning for a little bit, and then I've got to get into the, into the game, so to speak, get into the message prep. So anyway, really taking that day on Friday, and just really protecting that. And I feel like even in the last year or two, that Leslie and I have gotten even better about that. If you're really going to take a Sabbath. Really take a Sabbath. And I know some people feel like, well, that's Old Covenant, that's Old Testament and everything. But I'm telling you, there's such freedom and blessing in being able to slow down. That was something that Jesus never negated. He never he never threw out or got rid of was the Sabbath. He respected it. He observed it, and so. I'm telling you, it's one of those things that you have to kind of plan for, is to find a 24-hour window in your week where you say, I'm going to do extra work up front so that I can have a rest time. And man, I'm telling you, that is a day I look forward to, just to chill. And if it's not worship, fun, celebration, eating something good, hanging out with my wife, my girls, doing something really enjoyable, I'm just not going to do it, because you need a day to replenish. I would say diverting daily, and not only my quiet time in the morning, time alone with God, but at the end of the day, especially my work day, the Monday through Thursday, I try to take that 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock hour and go work out. And not because I'm trying to be the fittest pastor in the world or whatever, but it helps me to handle all of the other stress built up over the day, and just getting a good sweat on. I'm telling you, it just feels like I just feel better. Yeah, man, it's just the releasing of the endorphins and the, it just helps you to cope with life. And I pray. Charlie Lima at BoomFit, I do his CrossFit class over there. I love Charlie to pieces, but I tell him, man, some of those workouts make me pray like crazy. I don't know if I can make it through. They're hard, and especially for old guys like me. But anyway, so those are some of the things that I try to incorporate, and then the abandon annually is usually. As you know, in the month of July, we plan this in advance. We shoot these at the movies services, which are really in the place of the sermon for that month of July, those 4 weekends, where we take the storyline of a movie and use it like Jesus would use a parable. You're teaching a principle about God and how we relate to God, and we tie back in the scripture and share the gospel with people. And it's become an incredible outreach.
Absolutely.
It's a huge, it's amazing how many people come and how many people get touched by that. But we shoot all those through the spring. We're actually just about to start shooting them. The first one is just in a couple of weeks after Easter. And then anyway, so that buys back a big chunk of July for me. And I get it. Like, a lot of people don't get a month off, and a lot of pastors don't do that. And like, when did you ever? And I didn't start off like that. It took years for me to get myself organized and my year strategized so that I can do that.
Right.
But like you said, I want to treat this career and this calling like a marathon and not a sprint.
Right.
There are guys literally by the thousands and women that drop out of the ministry because it is one of the highest rates of burnout and people just going off the rails and do all kinds of, and it's because they're just flat worn out. They don't have anything left to give. And Sunday keeps coming.
Yeah.
The demands do not let up.
No.
Unless you create the breaks in your schedule will come and break you.
Yes.
So I have found that to be true personally. So where I feel like I'm on the brink, I'm like, God, I don't know if I can do this another year. And you just can't live there.
Yeah, no.
You can't, it's not healthy. And so that's what caused me to say, okay, I got to back up, and really was challenged by some of the pastors on my board that were like, Will, we want you to be able to build a healthy life because a healthy Will Lewis is the best gift we can give to Brazos Fellowship.
Absolutely.
And just like a healthy Lowell's the best gift we can give to M&M apparel. Like, it's with you come in the building and you're healthy, you're full, you've got joy and peace in your heart, and you're not frazzled and stressed out. I mean, people want to work with that guy.
Yeah.
They want to work for that guy. I mean, it's just it just is a no-brainer. And so
sometimes that public perception on the other side of the coin, people who come to church, sometimes that perception is met with, well, this is a burning passion for you. And that's not an incorrect statement.
Right.
The problem of that is just like anything else. Something will only burn for so long until you give it a rest, and then you can relight it again.
You get completely burnt out.
Yes, absolutely. And so that was one of the reasons why I threw that in there, because I really want people to know that it is... We talk about, you're talking about the Sabbath and practicing that on Friday, but it is the idea that if I don't restore, if I don't go back and re-pour back into my family, if I'm not dating my wife, if I'm not showing my kids what a healthy marriage looks like, I'm sure you don't want your kids looking at this going, look, church is so important that we just put the marriage on the back burner.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you've got so many responsibilities, not just in your professional life, so to say, but in that dad life, in that husband life, in those things that you committed to and made promises to as well too, that you don't want to let those fall to the wayside either. That really, it's like, I may not be pouring my time into here, but now I'm going to pour my time over into my family over here, which is a restoration back to me. And that's an instant feedback loop that I get that then restores my ability to walk back into you guys full 100%. It's like recharging your batteries, right?
100%.
So in saying that, then I also had commented about friendships. And in pastors' lives, again, this is another thing that I think people don't maybe see from the visual. We were talking about, most people are the result of influences within the closest 5 people that are in their circle, right? And to be in a circle of 5 people around a pastor doing it all the time, that's a pretty tight circle as it is, just because there's not a lot of time to give into those relationships. And so when I say, what do friendships look like around you? A lot of the times those friendships are perceptions of people who see, well, he's spending time over here with this one and this one and this one. But the reality of that is those are very quick little conversations and we're moving on. And then again, in that free time, it's, do I want my free time? How do I want that spent? Do I want that spent here with my family? Do I want that spent with these friends so that I can still keep those people because they're making me a better person being involved? But then on the backside of that is the part that I think people don't see is when you're a pastor, there again is this perception of you have to be 100% perfect, Will Lewis. And so, I mean,
good luck.
Yeah. So, that you're seen through this, you're seen through this spectrum of living the word, true testament to living the word. And we can walk through the Bible and see all of these places where people who were responsible for spreading the word still fell off, still weren't perfect, still didn't do these things. But then I thought about that on the backside of friendship with the loneliness factor of that. And it's the idea of there are times I'm sure that you go, I would love to be able to spend time with this friend or this old friend or whatever. I would love to be able to have that connection, weekly or whatever.
Yeah.
And that falls to the wayside again, just like the same way that your family forfeits time with you so that you have that time. And so pastors putting friendships in their lives in that really tight circle is not on purpose to just go, I just don't get along with a lot of people, so I just don't have a lot of friends. I mean, it's the idea of, listen, I have that my time is not infinite throughout the week, and I have a very limited supply of where it can be spent. So I want to spend it well. I want to make sure that the people who are in that circle understand that, I value your friendship enough that this is where I would spend time. And that's, again, a part of the reason why I'm so grateful that you're here today. I understand. I mean, we're going on almost 2 hours. But I know that that's 2 hours in your time that wasn't necessarily like, hey, let me go spend time with old buddy Lowell over here. It's the idea of getting you in here so that people see church and Will, and have this ability to have a different level of understanding for what it is that you do, what the church does. Yeah. And so the loneliness factor of not necessarily having sometimes the time to be able to cultivate those close friendships that you have. Is that something that you struggle with, or something that you found? And how do you see, there's not necessarily always a workaround on it, unfortunately. Sometimes your time is just what it is. It's your time, and it has to be spent in other places. But to those folks that are within that circle, what would you tell those guys, when I don't have the time, it's not that I'm not trying to lock in with you over
Right. Yeah, we have kind of an understanding because most of the guys that are in that circle for me also carry big loads. And that's part of the reason they're there, because they understand, you're going to feel the greatest kinship and camaraderie with, as a man, with other men that get you, that get what they understand. They're bearing up under a load that's similar to yours. Right. And you can relate to each other. And so a lot of the guys that are in that circle, Mac Richard's one of them, we have grace for each other. I know if it needs to be 24 hours or sometimes 48 hours before I'm able to get a phone call, I may get a text just saying, I'm so sorry, I'm slammed for the next 2 days. I just can't, but I will. We try to make a point to, let me give you some light at the end of the tunnel. I'm gonna merge out of this, and we can connect then. But so I feel like that's for me. And I think the point of application that might be for anybody who's listening to this is you need to be I want you to know that these men are close with me. I'm honest with everybody. I want to always be real with everybody, but I am completely vulnerable only with a precious few. And I think that's really how everybody ought to live. Absolutely. I don't think you ought to be dumping your your business standing in line at Walmart. I mean, that's probably not the person that you should be doing that with. Yeah.
I like how you picked the Walmart line as the place, because you're always going to find one there.
I mean, I'm just trying to relate to you a little.
Hey, I've been there, done that, man. I've got the record.
I feel like that. And it has taken some years to curate a good group of guys, and I'll be honest, we don't always, I'm not always getting together with them either, because they're super busy. So I might, I go back to Mac, he was here this weekend. We had an awesome time on Saturday to hang out, had dinner together, had multiple hours just to sit and debrief with each other. And then I got to hang out with him a little bit on Sunday. But he had to go immediately back to Austin. He had a funeral for like a 20-year-old kid that got killed in the car. So like, that's just the life, you know, that's part of it. Yeah. So he preaches twice, drives all the way out, and he's got another sermon, you know, he's got to do there. So, but, Bill Cornelius, another good friend, and lots of other guys I could name. We get it. Like, we all been there. We know what that's like. And so we do it when we can. Sure. And we try to use a lot of technology, call each other, catch up that way sometimes. And so, but yeah, that's kind of how it goes. Yeah.
So I didn't give you an easy out on this next question. I've already kind of forewarned you on it because I knew your answer was going to be Leslie. So I'll start by saying Leslie's awesome. We love Leslie. Sure. But my question here is who inspires you and influences you? So I automatically put Leslie's name down there because kind of think in that same world, you know, well, we've been married a long time. If I don't say Deanna, I'm going to be in trouble, you know? So just kidding. Right. So, but who is it that you look at that inspires and influences you, not just necessarily in your pastor life, but in your everyday life? Who do you see that has that influence that you look at and go, man, that is a person that I need pouring into me. That is a person that I need to be watching, reading, listening to, whatever that is.
Yeah. That is a good question. I think what I have noticed in my life, that as the church has grown, I look to different guys for different things, like different specialists. I feel like they're kind of like specialists in certain areas. Sure. And sometimes you find somebody that's just like, this person just kills it at everything. You know, one of the churches that at Brazos Fellowship that we really love and are connected to, there's actually a network of churches, is North Point Community Church over in Atlanta, Georgia. Right. And Andy Stanley, son of Charles Stanley, that's the pastor there. And I've gotten to know Andy a little bit, but I really love how they lead their church. I feel like is a very biblical model. I feel like they do a beautiful job of doing what we do, but a much bigger. Of course, pre-COVID, it was all their campuses probably 35 to 40,000 people a Sunday. Yeah. And that's maybe a half dozen really large campuses. Right. And so, and they didn't get there overnight. It was just systematically and consistently doing these things over and over and over through the years, and teaching God's word in a way that is relevant to, and it's understandable, and it's challenging. So yeah, I'd say North Point Community Church. Another one is Life Church. Craig Rochelle, he's based out of Oklahoma City. But they've got campuses all over the place too. Again, pre-COVID. So they're the largest church in America. They were probably closer to 100,000 people Sunday. Wow. With all their campuses. Nobody knows about it. Craig doesn't ever fly that flag. He doesn't ever promote that. He doesn't talk about it. That's one of the things I love about him. Yeah. He's just humble about it. He's just over there quietly changing the world. The YouVersion app. Yes. Their church made that app. Wow. Hardly anybody knows that. Yeah. They still run it. And the first time I went to their offices, they had a giant flat screen TV on the wall with a ticker that was clicking. And I was like, what is that? Yeah. And it was already in the millions. Wow. Like, it's crazy. And so now it's in the tens of millions. I don't even know. Oh, yeah. It might be hundreds.
Yeah, I mean, because how many groups are using that? How many churches are using that to plug people back in virtually? Yes. You know, or, hey, I'm in my car, you have the ability to have it with you anywhere, anytime.
Craig was also one of the first people to make every piece of all the resources of their church, all their sermon series, all their small group material, free for anybody at any time. They eat the cost of all of that. Wow. Yeah, it's truly remarkable what they're doing. Anyway, those are probably two of the guys that I have. Again, nobody's perfect. I'm sure if you go try to pick apart their ministry, you'll find things like, I know somebody does that better. But I'm just telling you, from the little bit of time that I've been around those men, they're the real deal. And makes my heart glad to see God bless them in such big ways, because I feel like they have been faithful with the little things, and now God is blessing them with much. And so, and of course, I aspire to be the same, and our market and where God's put us, and everybody, God assigns you a place to go make a difference if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, and being able to be faithful where you are, where you've been planted, it's the goal. So,
okay, book. You get to pick up a book. And I know you've got a bunch in your library. I know there's a lot that you reference back to. There's probably even some that are staples within your, within your organization, and even within Brazos Fellowship, that are like leadership books and things like that.
Yeah.
But you get an opportunity to pick up your book, and you get, a little free time. Doesn't have to necessarily do with, I need to pick this book up because I'm writing a sermon this week, but it's a book to fill you in, and to be able to pass that time that may be free time for you. Who's your author that you're going to, and why?
So my answer may be different in a couple of months. I don't know. But right now I have been kind of immersing myself in some Dallas Willard books. One that I'm literally on the third round going through it, back to back. I'm just like, I want to absorb more of what this man, if you've read any of Dallas Willard, it is dense. He was a philosophy professor at USC until he passed away in 2013. Brilliant man, just a genius, and just committed, obedient follower of Jesus Christ, and had a theological mind as well as philosophical, that he could function in the academic world, and made such a huge impact. Anyway, The Renovation of the Heart is the book I've been going through recently, and just love it. And it's just all about spiritual formation and how does God change us from the inside out. And he goes through all of the components represented in Scripture that God talks about in the spirit, the heart, the will, and then our emotions and our desires, and how that flows into our body. Literally, Paul says that there is sin in our members, that there is a sense in which your body has built certain habits that are not good for it, and that can destroy it. And we have to, and then the next step is your social circle, the people you're connected to. You can't connect to people without your body. Your body is integral to who you are and what you do. So it's just, he talks about how all those blend together, and how you bring all of them in full submission to Jesus Christ. And anyway, it's been it's one of the most thorough and deep treatments of this topic that I have ever read. That's probably part of the reason why I'm reading it for the third time right now. It's just, I've really enjoyed it. And but apart from Dallas Willard, I would say Timothy Keller from Redeemer Presbyterian. Now he's stepped down as senior pastor in Manhattan, Redeemer Presbyterian, and he's just a phenomenal man. Again, everything I've never met him. He's kind of like a, mentor from afar. But I have tried to read just about everything he's written, and it's just brilliant. Just had such, he's still alive, but he's just had a brilliant mind for how to show through the lens of Jesus and the gospel how it is represented in all of Scripture. And it's just breathtaking the way he puts it together. So anyway, I highly recommend those two. But up front, I'll tell you, anything by Dallas Willard, you need to just be patient. You may have to read it a couple times, because he just was on another level.
Pull some time out for it.
Yes. Right. He's operating on another level than most people. And
nice.
But brilliant if you can hang with him. So, yeah.
So 30 years of pastoring, this question's going to this is going to run a gambit of a long lineage in that 30 years. So cultural shifts, so what it looked like 30 years ago to what it looks like today, and kind of even what's, you were talking on socially, these social circles and things like that. And I think in terms of how social media has, man, I want to be real cautious about how I use this word here, because it's almost warped a reality into these generational gaps, right? Like, we have a belief, and you and I are a similar age, and we see this generational culture shifting. Each generation seems to have different challenges.
Yeah.
Definitely growing up in environments that, man, I think back if there were cell phone cameras and videos and TikTok and all this stuff back when we were in the 80s, it would not be a good thing. Let's start with that, right? But you have this cultural shift that is happening within the United States. And how do you bring that into your messaging at church? Like, that you're pastoring to, there's a core group that's in there, but you also understand, and you've got guys like Chris who are supporting you on the backside with college students that are coming in, 242 and things like that. But how do you embrace the cultural shifts of what's happening in society, pull them back in for your messaging, and still be able to keep the core values of what the Bible tells you is Scripture?
Yeah.
So how do you find that as being a challenge? Do you find it as, do you seek guidance in that? Because, it's kind of funny. My daughter, again, the one with the enlightening questions over here, informed me the other day, Daddy, hashtags are not cool anymore. Wasn't even aware of it. I barely use them as it is, but thanks for letting me know, kid. My 9-year-old schooling me on what's acceptable now. Do you seek advice on that when you're looking at addressing things that are maybe within a cultural shift that you can see on the horizon? Yeah,
I mean, because I've got daughters that are 23, 20, and 14.
That's a great.
They're, and I have, and then we have several younger, really sharp young adults on our staff too. There are times where I may run that by somebody and just say, hey, does this communicate well with you? Most of the time, though, I'm not necessarily trying to speak just to a generation. I'm really trying to take God's word and present it in a way that is appealing or makes sense to and applicable to a larger swath of people. So I have found, Lowell, that I think what's even more powerful than being like hip and the latest, greatest cutting edge is if you're real and authentic, and people feel that, they sense that, they sniff that out faster probably now in this generation than ever before. They can tell when it's just kind of phony, you're just mailing it in. And I think that's one of my prayers going into every message is, God, help me to be totally present, totally like speaking from a heart of compassion, also conviction, and feel that weight that I talked about, carrying that with me, that this is a holy moment and that God has something really powerful and important He once said, and I don't want to mess it up.
Right.
And I don't feel like, I want to be careful that I don't do something that makes it sound completely antiquated and outdated and doesn't matter and irrelevant. But at the same time,
don't use hashtags.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes I will use stuff that's maybe trendy or something, but I use it more as a joke. I'll do it silly. Just to sometimes, especially on the front end of a message, that kind of breaks the ice. It gets people loosened up. When you get them laughing a little bit, they relax. It's just, they're a little more open to hear what you have to say.
Right.
And I probably don't spend a whole lot of time like, is this the most cutting edge in terms of social media and culture, but is this real? And is this accurate to what God said? And God has a way through His Holy Spirit of doing the rest of the work.
Yeah. Well, and
I don't want to oversimplify it, but
no, the reality is those cultural shifts are also interlocked in with politics, right? And you said early on in the podcast, like, we ain't about addressing the politics stuff. Like, leave all that aside because politics aren't in control.
Yeah.
They may appear to be in control, but they aren't in control. God's
Right.
in control. And so when those things get all meshed up in there and everything else, but we say that, listen, politics aside, man, like, you can vote for whoever you want to vote for, but I know who I'm going to see after this whole deal's over, and it ain't on the ballot. So I'm just saying, so this is kind of where we're at with it.
That's right.
But, I know that the ebb and flow of cultural shifts, like you referred to, what's hot and trendy now and what won't be down the road, are also things that people are I seek guidance into how my daughter views the world, whereas I can sit there and go, man, I know how I was raised. Well, I don't want to raise my daughter the way that I was raised because, my mom would have had to have done a much different job back in the, 70s and 80s raising me than I have to today. And there's a lot more things competing for my kid, her attention, just in general than there was back then. I mean, you had to unplug me from, Scooby-Doo or whatever, it was a pretty easy life back then. And now there's all of these things that are constantly picking and battering my daughter to tell her what she is, what she isn't, so here I am firewalling that up as a dad to just say, listen, just because it's on YouTube doesn't make it real. Just because your friends are saying these things doesn't necessarily believe, or how they believe otherwise is not necessarily where we're at. And so those cultural shifts are always like, and I won't play your message, but I'd said earlier, you had a message that I'd recorded on the board that we were playing before we got started that said there are things vying for your attention.
Yes.
Things that are not good for you, things that are constantly at battle with what God sees as good for you. And they're constantly working against that.
Yes.
I think those cultural shifts that are happening are a part of that. Like, we tend to lose sight of what the message is and what the word has always been because these cultural shifts tell us, well, you're just not moving along with where everybody else is. And you are stuck here, or you are stuck back in this. And so I think that as a pastor, you see that probably more so as I can stay true to the message over here and still address it over here to say, listen, these things are going to continue. If not anything, you will have a bigger barrage hitting you of things that want your time and want you to experience these. These are good for you. This is where it feels good to spend time. And the next thing you know, you've lost 10 hours in your week on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, as opposed to constantly sending that message out. Like, don't be subservient here to these things that are vying for your time, that carry zero value in your long-term inevitable life that awaits you and that God has for you. So we talked about physical fitness. Now, the one thing we didn't talk about physical fitness, because I know Charlie's over there just busting you up and CrossFitting you, which you're in great shape, but you also have a hobby on the backside of all that. You touched on it just briefly, which is mountain biking, right?
Yes.
So I had heard somewhere down the road that this started before it was mountain biking. It was BMXing. Like, were you like BMX biking and stuff?
Yeah. I used to race BMX bikes back in high school.
So what was your bike, man? Like, was it Mongoose? Was it Diamondback? Was there? I'm taking you way back here.
Yes.
Start hearing those names and you're like, whoa, I forgot.
Have you ever heard of a Skyway?
Yeah.
Okay. I had a Skyway and I had a GT.
Yep.
GT Performer. Let's see. What were some of the other bikes? Kuwahara. You ever heard of Kuwahara?
I have not.
Okay. Well, if you ever saw the movie E.T.
Okay. Yeah.
Kuwahara was one of the key bikes that was got real famous off of that movie.
So for the record, my wife went to school with Henry Thomas from E.T.
No way.
yeah. I just had to throw that out there. There's a little tidbit of information people didn't know. He actually went to the same school as her. I think he was like a year or two in front of her or whatever.
Where's she from?
So we both grew up in San Antonio, but she went to school at East Central High School, which is, it's kind of like, Lavernia-ish.
Okay.
I'm really butchering where it's at. I
didn't even know he was from Texas.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
funny.
there you go. So see, we just tied all that back around to something, but I had to give my wife a shout out.
And he played at Elliott, right?
He did.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
So you raced bikes all the way up until?
Kind of through probably maybe sophomore year. And then junior year, I got a car. So I was like, cool I wasn't really. So
throw it in the trunk.
So what we did, on the weekend, we were, running around with our friends. So I didn't race as much anymore. But here's what I kept doing with my brothers mainly, and then with some other friends, is just dirt jumping. So we lived we had like 70-something acres out in Driftwood, Texas, near Wimberley, Texas. And there's lots
the bike jumps.
Lots of good terrain to build jumps. So we built lots of jumps out there, and we had dirt bikes too. But there was something about jumping the bicycle. It was a little more pure, and it was lighter, and you could just doing tricks on it. And plus, the stakes weren't quite as high. You crash on a motocross bike, you're going to the hospital. And so, so I kind of did that up into college, and then I kind of graduated. I'm just a shade under 6'3", so I got a little too big for a 20-inch bike. So I wound up getting there's a big BMX class called the Cruiser class, and they make 24 and 26-inch bikes, which 26 is the size that mountain bikes started at. That was the original mountain bike size, which nobody makes those anymore.
Right.
But so I had a Cruiser, 24-inch Cruiser, and then later bought a mountain bike that I kind of made into a BMX bike, which nobody was making those back. Now they're easy to find. You can find them all over the place.
You started the trend.
I don't know, but there was other guys. I kind of, got ideas off the internet, like how do we do this and make it single speed and all that. So and I started jumping, and it was really always to dirt jump. Like that was always the fun part of it for me, was jumping doubles, jumping tabletop jumps, and so I kept mountain biking. I like riding trails too. And then over time, I kind of graduated up to the 2.9er, the big wheeled mountain bike, and that's what I ride now. Just pretty much everywhere that we've ever lived, you can check with Leslie on this, I have found somewhere to build a mountain bike trail near our house back in the woods. We've always had access somehow to some, parkland or something. And so it's funny because as far as like just recreation and decompressing and just fun for me, I think I almost enjoy building the trail as much as riding it. Now, that's going to sound really crazy.
Are you thinking about like, man, this is going to ride awesome,
yes,
or this is going to be challenging?
It's like sculpting. When you build a jump, like it's not just a pile of dirt. You have to. It has the lip has to have a certain degree. I mean, you use your phone. You can I want it to be, this one to be 60 degrees. I want this one to be, 30 degrees. I want it to.
You're tearing a corner. You want there to be a corner to tear into. Right?
Yeah, and you want to bank a corner. You want to have a berm in there. And it takes a while to dig it, smooth it, flat shovel. It's a lot of hours, but it's just kind of soothing to me. I like go out in the woods.
Do you think that's just because it's single focus? Like you're not really thinking about
moving dirt with
else.
A shovel. It's pretty simple work. And I can talk to the Lord. I'm out in the middle of the woods. I'm sure anybody walking up on me thinks I'm crazy, but thankfully I've never had anybody walk up on me, or at least I didn't know they did. They were quietly crept away.
Well, I totally get the mountain bike thing, because the mountain bike thing is more singular focus too when you're on it. You can't really have your attention in a whole lot of other places while you're mountain biking.
Oh, and it's an adrenaline rush.
Right.
Especially when you're jumping. When you're going off of a lip, and you're like, okay, and some of these where I ride, they're 5 and 6 feet. I mean, they're not little tiny jumps. They're pretty. You got to be on top of your stuff when you're going off of this. Make sure, okay, am I ready to do this? This is a pretty heavy commitment. You can't back out at the last second.
So I'm going to ask, do you take a GoPro or anything with you so you can review it after the fact? Or?
I've had people that have gone with me that have, but I have never done that. And It's not that I'm just anti that, but it's kind of like, for me, it defeats the purpose. I'm going out there to kind of get away. I don't really want to film what I'm doing.
I didn't know how committed you were, Will. You're like, I'm going back, and I saw that at this turn I didn't do this.
It's just all fun. Like, that's why I don't like to race mountain bikes. I don't want to compete. That to me, it gets too serious. I'm a competitor, but it's not fun anymore. I guess it's fun if you win at the very end, but it's the process.
What's been the best location you've mountain biked at?
Man, if I was just going to pick just a single spot, Bentonville, Arkansas.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I know.
Were you behind the Walmart headquarters? Or
I was close. So evidently, Sam Waltman, I guess one of his grandsons or somebody that's like way into mountain biking. Well, that little town has dumped millions of dollars into trail building.
Wow.
And some of the best I've ever seen in the world.
Wow.
Like, it is, they're kind of claiming Bentonville now as the new mountain bike capital of the world.
Interesting.
Sort of tongue in cheek a little bit, but I'm like, seriously, like, that's one of the best. It's insane how good it is. It's like Disney World on steroids for mountain biking. It's crazy how good it is. So if anybody out there that's listening, and the beautiful thing is it's got this paved concrete trail that you could ride on any kind of street bike, and all of the dirt trails wind off of that up the hills, all through kind of the Ozark Mountains. I think they call it the Razorback Breezeway, or the Razorback something way, or something like that. But it's so fun, and we took our whole family and everybody. I was kind of shocked. Everybody had a blast. So.
Of all the places, I did not think you would say.
I know.
First off, I didn't think you'd say
too.
Arkansas to begin with, but then Bentonville, Arkansas on top of that. I didn't think that would be your spot.
It's a beautiful little town too. Lots of great little eateries and great little coffee shops, and
there's a ton of stuff there that used to not be there. I mean, Walmart is the reason most of that stuff is there.
All those executives moved in and brought all the money, and it's like the little town's like a little Disney World. It's
listen, when Tyson Chicken moves to Bentonville, Arkansas, there's a reason for that. So
yeah, it's a fun place. I wouldn't say maybe it's my favorite place on planet Earth, but if you were just going to mountain bike, it'd be hard to do better.
All right.
Anyway.
Guilty pleasures. Here we go.
Guilty pleasures.
So you're in the car, windows down. You're not in town. Let's assume you're somewhere else, maybe because you don't want people listening or whatever. I don't know. What are you blasting your radio to? What's on there?
Man, honestly, I'm not real cool, I guess, when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, I like some older rock and stuff occasionally, but honestly, lately, like if I'm in the car, whatever, I only have like one car that's got Sirius XM, but man, I've been listening to 1940s big band.
Wow.
I know it sounds so crazy, but there's just something about it. It's just beautiful music, and it's kind of soothing, and it's
let me make you
throwback stuff.
Let me make you feel worse here, Will. So my kid has been listening to like Michael Jackson and stuff like that. And I'm like,
from the 80s?
Oh, yeah. And she knows like all the words and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. But then I started thinking about, because, grew up in the 80s and things like that. And I'm sitting there going, if we did the math backwards from now to the 80s and from when I was in the 80s, that music that my parents would have had me listening to, like I have her listening to, would have been the 40s and 50s. So, I'm just saying, I mean, there's something to that, that 30, 40 year mark backwards, man, it really makes you appreciate the music better, I think. I mean, I'm such an eclectic of listening to so much different kind of music, and I really want to experience that with my daughter as well, too, so that she knows this stuff. She knows way more 80s songs than any kid being 9-year-old should know, but at that same point, the appreciation for that music is a lot better, even from me, that it still holds up to time. Yeah. And so, but I did not anticipate you would say 40s music, blasting that out your window.
I would say the other decade, other than the 1940s, like World War II music, big band. Would probably be the 80s.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite decade of music. I love myself some 80s. That was when I was in high school, so it still feels like cool music.
So were you hair band? Was it Van Halen? Was it,
I
what
like
was
some of those. I kind of was like, honestly, if maybe a little bit more in the, kind of the British invasion bands.
Oh, the Clash.
Yeah.
I mean, or these
A little Clash, or maybe like Depeche Mode.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Okay.
Howard Jones.
Oh,
and
man.
all these guys. I don't know. There's just a lot of those.
One of the best concerts we went and saw was an 80s throwback concert when Deanna and I first got married. This was in 90, I don't know, we might not even have been married. We might have been dating at that time. 95, 96, big 80s concert, came to San Antonio, Sunken Gardens. Howard Jones was on the ticket for that.
No way.
Yeah. And my wife ran down to the stage. Again, I'm going to give her another shout out here. Ran down to the stage to touch the hand of one formerly known Rick Springfield that was playing on stage.
Oh, I had a Rick Springfield album.
Oh, man.
Living in Oz.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of good hits. And U2 is another one. I still love U2.
Oh, man.
That
is a time-tested.
Joshua Tree.
That's a time-tested band.
Oh, gosh.
I mean,
it's just one of the greatest albums of all time, I think.
Holds up solid today.
So I would blast. There's several songs on there.
Awesome. Love it.
So anyway, yeah.
Favorite non-Charlie Lima approved snack?
Oh, man, that's a good question. Okay, well, it really comes down to some things that my wife makes.
Okay.
Like, she knows, like, one of my favorite desserts of all time is sopapilla cheesecake. Oof. I have a hard time not having about 4 of those at a time. And pretty much any hot cookie out of the oven, chocolate chip, oatmeal raisin, I mean, you name it.
Just so long as it's warm, right?
It's just, if it's warm and then a cold glass of milk, it's like, I don't care what culinary treat was made by what famous artisan, like that is hard to beat.
Yeah.
It's so delicious. So yeah, those are some things that I have a hard time backing away from the hot cookie pan and the sopapilla cheesecake. So
all right, so I put a remote control in your hand. I've given you 2 hours of your day back. What's your guilty pleasure in turning on TV and watching?
Again, it's going to sound so lame to anybody who's listening to this. Leslie and I just finished. I'd say it's binge watching. We probably just watch like 1, sometimes 2 episodes a night, depending on how much time we have. We were watching the Great British Bake Off or the Great British Baking Show. And it's like, I don't know what it is about those British people baking. It's just, and they're all their little quirky sayings and everything.
The judges on there are brutal, by the way.
They're brutal.
They are brutal.
Paul Hollywood and Prue, or Mary is in the first, the early sessions. And,
yes.
Oh my, Mary Berry. And, but we got on a roll with the British baking, and it was hard to get off. So we're like, I think the only thing left is like the holiday shows. It's all the Christmas where they had brought back some of the encore people. And so anyway, yeah, that's what we've been watching lately. We're actually, we've kind of wrapped that up. We watched WandaVision with the girls. That was kind of fun.
Are you Marvel? Is that Marvel?
Yeah, I love Marvel stuff.
Have you watched the Falcon and Winter Soldier yet?
Not yet.
Oh, dude.
You liking it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's gonna be, especially.
Pretty epic.
Listen, WandaVision.
Yeah, I know.
That's for the desperate, like Marvel guys are like, just give me something. And it really feels like they just gave me something.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Yeah, no, you've got to.
This is going to be pretty cool.
The next time you get the remote in your hand, you've got to watch, because they're going to come out the same way. They're going to have episode 1 and then an episode 2 a week later, and so
like 6 of them or something. Yeah,
dude, incredible. First episode's
I can't
awesome.
wait to watch it.
Awesome.
Well, we saw it pop up last night, but not everybody was free to watch. We kind of been doing it together, so we didn't want to jump ahead.
It's
of
everything you
girls.
hoped WandaVision was going to be.
Oh,
with the
good.
action, all that stuff. It's incredible.
Oh, you got me so psyched.
All right, there you go. I've given you something
This
to
is
watch.
wonderful.
So when you run out of your British baking series there, you
Which
can
is
flip.
basically, I'm there. Yeah.
You can flip on over.
That's awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
Biggest joy in your life?
Biggest joy in my life. Oh man. Gosh, that's a really good question. I think seeing my girls win, and I see them apply their faith and take steps forward and see God bless them. I mean, it's just an awesome feeling seeing your kids connecting with something that's so precious to you. Mm-hmm. And I'd say the same thing about staff members or anybody else around me that I see them going, like the individual I mentioned earlier, just going through really hard times, but seeing God, just his faithfulness in such beautiful ways, holding them up through those times. It's just, it's hard to beat that, of seeing people not letting that shake them from their faith. And anyway,
it's got to feel good to reinforce the fact that you're doing the right thing for your daughters as well too, when they follow in that same line. Not necessarily saying pastor-wise, but just saying everything you've poured out is being seen, heard, and practiced. I mean, that's really
And I mean, my girls are not perfect, and I want to be careful. I'm not saying something I'm not really saying. But they, I just, even my middle daughter, Allie, and her fiance, Zach, and just how they've handled, by the time they get married in May, about 18 months of their, that's a long time to be engaged. Yeah. And especially if you're committed to waiting for
it'll still be around.
Intimacy. And, gosh, I'm just proud of them. Like they've really been wise. They've been really smart and on a lot of levels, not just that one, but, I'm proud papa on a lot of that. But, anyway.
Biggest regret.
I would say back in 2002, I think it was on August the 2nd, I lost my dad to cancer. So at the beginning of this month, it was about 19 years ago, and I was a young church planter up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at that time, and I was just going 90 to nothing, and I was super busy. If I could go back and relive that last 6 to 12 months, I would have seized a lot more time with Dad. I would have gone to see him a lot more, and when he could still move, take some walks, and just there's some things I would have asked him. There's some conversation. I told him I loved him, and we ended it really well. But there's always things later. Not all my girls were. Emily hadn't been born yet, and none of the churches had really taken off or done much more than just barely survive at that point. And I think there's some things that I would have loved to have shared with him and talked to him more about. If I could take this Will Lewis at 51 and go back, and, so that I would say probably. And it's not a regret, like I feel like it gnaws on me. I feel like we ended really well, and I can't wait to see him in heaven someday. Yeah.
Well, that's going to lead into my last question for you. And this last question, I spent a little time digging this question up. So, I feel like this is kind of the be-all to end-all question here for us to wrap up the podcast on.
Okay.
What would you, as older Will Lewis today, say to or advise younger Will Lewis of yesterday?
Man, that's a great question, too. I think I would tell him to start like really taking the Sabbath seriously sooner. And really, especially when the kids are little, like really try to enjoy them even more. I feel like I really did, but I feel like I was just kind of on the go so much that it feels a little like a blur. Like that, we have a lot of great pictures, and we were able to go do some fun things together as a family. But I think just slowing down, being a little more present, like that's so hard.
It is.
It's easy to say, I want to be present. But I mean, like turn your phone off and go put it in a drawer somewhere. Turn all the electronics, TV, everything off for a period of time and just be quiet together, hang out, play games, go for a walk, ride bikes. And I'm not saying we didn't do those things, but we definitely could have done more.
Yeah.
I think just really being present with people and for them. I think it's a gift that we're moving further away from. I think it's harder and harder for people to do. It's just something you have to train yourself to do, is to really be present with someone and really listen to them. I heard, this was several years ago, that one of the last developmental stages of the human brain is empathy. Being able to feel what someone else is going through. Like, you have to really listen to and be in the moment with them to be able to do that. And I feel like that's something that I would want to try to start sharpening that blade at an earlier age, and just really guarding my time with the Lord. And I think I would have started, I've always done some version of course, quiet time and journaling, but journaling has become a whole different animal for me now. It is like a lifeblood kind of thing for me. It's not really that for everybody. As a matter of fact, Sean and I were talking about recently, it doesn't, he's got some other things that work great for him. That's not really his thing, which I totally get it. But for me, it's, you just got to sit with it a little bit.
Yeah.
You got to just let that passage that you just went over, just marinate on it and go through it. And how does God's Spirit want me to apply this? What are the different ways? What confession do I need to make right here in God's presence? What conviction do you need to bring to my heart? And what do I need to thank you for? And then at the last, ask him for whatever supplications you're asking for. And so I kind of walk through that kind of acrostic of application, confession, thanksgiving, supplication. I got that from St. Augustine of Hippo, one of the earliest church fathers in Christendom, but it's beautiful how profound it is. And so it's just something I would have challenged myself probably earlier to do. Not that I wasn't doing that, but I think I would hurry through it. I wouldn't give it the time it needed. But so anyway, those are just some of the things that I think I probably would do.
Well, man, I'm super grateful that you spent time with me today.
Thank you.
I think there's a lot of value in what we've discussed here. Really want to encourage folks, if you're in the area and you're looking for a church, you're looking for a place to get plugged in, please come to Brazos Fellowship. Let us open the doors for you, bring you in, and show you the culture that's been built here at Brazos Fellowship. Really under the guidance here of Will Lewis. I mean, I know it's not all you, and there's right. One thing that's said about great leaders. Great leaders take on all the responsibility and all of the deals when things are bad. When things go south, man, hey, it's me. I'm the leader. I'm responsible. But there are also the great leaders that give all the good away. And I know you are a phenomenal leader when it comes to giving away the good. It's like, listen, man, that's so-and-so. That's this person. I mean, but ultimately at the forefront of the church, there has to be somebody who leads it and somebody who's the face of it and everything else. And it's a tough place to sit and a tough place to be sometimes. It's great when things are going great. And, other times when you're there, it's in those moments of challenges, COVID and all these other things that kind of come up to the doorstep of the church that we end up having to address that really, like you said, forces you to sharpen your blade. I would, the thing that I've said at this table many a times is I don't think anybody is any worse from COVID 2020 at a leadership level. At a leadership level, most people got better. Yeah. They figured better ways, more efficient ways, things that they maybe didn't see in that rearview mirror at that point, and then got an opportunity to have it right in front of them to address it. And so, I mean, the comfortability level of our members who come to church that know that we're working in a vein to help keep them protected, to give them the best line of sight to be able to get in there to garner God's message, to be able to grow spiritually so that we can fall back in line with that church mission statement of bringing people in line to a closer relationship, to grow
Yes.
that relationship with Jesus Christ. That's the single most important thing that we as a church can do as a whole. Not, and I know it's where you live your life every day. It's where you live those sermons when you put them on paper and you bring them to the stage every week. And it's a huge responsibility that you're tasked with. You have a tremendous staff and leadership group around you that understands that mission statement and works in that same vein as you're trying to produce that. They're doing it on the backside to also give that same deal. It's awesome to watch it work internally. And I know that if I can see it inside, that it's portrayed outside to people who come and just spend a little bit of time with us.
Yeah.
And we'd love nothing more than to have you there on Sunday and
sure.
get an opportunity to plug in. We can plug you into other places, small groups, college ministry, children's groups, things that we have there that can really help, ground your family, ground you in your life of where you're at. Maybe things are in a spiral right now. You need a little bit more solidity. Let us give you an opportunity to show you what Brazos Fellowship's about. Will Lewis, so grateful that you came in to share your story.
Thank you.
I asked you some tough questions. I mean, there's things that really kind of transparently, put you on the spot here to kind of answer some stuff. And I'm so grateful to be able to call you a friend, call you my pastor. I'm grateful that you're leading Brazos Fellowship in what God has planned for you and has planned for the church. And I'm just happy to be a part of it in whatever way that I can do that.
Awesome.
So thank you for coming in today, spending time with us. I'm so grateful for you, grateful for your friendship, grateful for your knowledge and things that you brought here today. And I'm sure there'll be a ton of people who will listen to this that maybe will have a different perspective and a little bit different look into what it is that you do. And be able to see Will in a little bit different light as well too, and have a greater appreciation for what it is that you sacrifice, your family sacrifices. And again, we're grateful for them for sharing you with us, because that's really what we asked them to do. So Leslie and kids, man, thank y'all very much for giving us time with Will to be able to grow our faith in knowing that, again, like you said earlier, what you see is really what you get. You don't live a life inside a church that looks completely different outside the church. If there's one thing that I've heard about Will, it is that what you see is what you get. Awesome. And so I appreciate you living that life, and even more so, I have this little, almost like a bonding with you, talking about that your mom and dad divorced when you were a younger age. I grew up in that same deal. So I know your commitment to your family is there for the purpose of breaking a cycle that doesn't continue.
Absolutely.
And so again, and that's reflective of how your family and you coordinate with each other to allot those times, but also to keep in mind what's still important on the backside to ensure the solidity for your family life as well too. So we're grateful that they share you with us, man. I mean, you're a blessing to the church, a blessing to the Brazos Valley area. And again, we want to give everybody an opportunity to come out and visit us at Brazos Fellowship. If you're looking for more information, you can reach us at brazosfellowship.com. There's a lot of information on there, emails of staff members, phone numbers that we can get you plugged into if you've got any questions that we can answer for you as well too. And again, Will Lewis, Senior Pastor, Brazos Fellowship. Again, thanks, brother, for coming in today. I'm so grateful for you coming in today.
I appreciate
Guys,
you.
appreciate you spending time with us today. We look forward to talking to you in the future. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.